Dickhead shit talk. Huddled single file. First world frat boys and prairie skinheads who will never walk a mile. Or mourn a murdered friend in this tiny woman's shoes. Drink up and mumble your abuse. I'm still humbled by it all. And around the same time, I was running with no hands.
You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. This episode is the deluxe edition of Matika Moris Ukun Rasik, track 1 from Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. This episode has a few parts to preview. First, you will hear a brand new cover of the song performed by Matt Comtois. Matt will be familiar to listeners of this podcast from his cover of Adventures in Zoochosis, which he sung in French, and his cover of Iteration. If you haven't heard those, they can be found on How to Take a Couple of Victory Laps, celebrating 40 years of propaganda, available now from Engineer Records, and they can also be heard on his episodes on the podcast. After Matt's cover, you will hear the original episode 30 from December of 2020, featuring Willem from Intellectual, and a cover by Willem and Ian Leger, the punk cellist. Then you will hear Matika Moris Ukun Rasik Part 2 with Jeff Lareau. Jeff did an awesome orchestral arrangement cover of the song, and Jeff is also in a really cool band from Chicago called Grey Ghost, so go check them out. And lastly, you will hear part of my conversation with John Schofield from the UK hardcore band Without Love. John's band is really awesome, and you should go check them out. And this conversation can be heard in full at his episode from February of 2024. Without further delay, please enjoy the deluxe episode of Matika Moris Ukun Rasik.
Dickheads shit talk. Huddled single file. First world frat boys and prairie skinheads who will never walk a mile. Or mourn a murdered friend in this tiny woman's shoes. Drink up and mumble your abuse. I'm so humbled by it all. Not around the same time, I was riding with no hands, busting windows and getting busy behind the sportsplex with Levante's older sister decked out in Speedo's. Bella was flinching from the sting. A depot prover in family planning, her own Pearl Harbor, and a Holocaust spanning 25 years to life. Prison, my country, on a road in paradise. And in the shadows of Santa Cruz, she crossed her fingers behind her back and built Suardo a Trojan horse and lay still till the motherfucker center of north, where as night fell she emerged with a box under her arm, held her pledge of allegiance and her uniform. And she laid it at the gates of the general's embassy. And her whisper echoed into dawn as she disappeared. The truth will set my people free.
Until now, our track selections have been so random that I hadn't really considered that we had never done a track one. So I'm very excited to do an opening track on this particular episode. And
Sure.
I'm really relieved right now because I know that Chris Hanna has a new Patreon episode in the works on the song March of the Crabs, but the voting poll was neck and neck. And
it was like election night.
Oh my God. And the comments were so funny too. It was like, you guys know natural disasters like one big, right? Even though it got like one vote. And so, I was sitting there watching this poll and I was like, please don't let Mate Ka win. Go Crabs, go Crabs. Because I knew that we had this episode in the works and I was like super terrified that we were going to get like putting out a Mate Ka Moris Ukun Rasik episode right at the same time Chris was. And I really don't want to do that because I don't want this show in any way, shape, or form to like step on the amazing work that he's doing over there. So I'm super pumped for the March of the Crabs episode, and I'm super pumped for our Mate Ka episode. So hooray for that. But seeing as how this is the first song on the legendary Today's Empires LP, I was digging around for some album info, and I found the archived G7 Welcoming Committee website. And I figured that since this was track one, this was appropriate to bust out. So the album description from G7's archived website is this: 14 brand new anthems thrown into the ever-expanding ring of resistance to empire and assholes. Fast, heavy, irreverent, melodic punk rock that tips its hat, real gentleman-like, to the mid-'80s political hardcore and speed metal that radicalized these three backwater skids in the first place. Still convinced that making records is much more than just music and that people aren't the complete and utter idiots that the corporate media and music industry seems convinced they are. Propagandy brings us a fully interactive multimedia CD-ROM bursting at the seams with an in-depth critical commentary on the foreign and domestic policy of empire, courtesy of William Blum, author of Killing Hope and Rogue State, and Ward Churchill, author of Agents of Repression, Little Matter of Genocide, and the COINTELPRO papers, getting bulldozed by 50,000 watts of unbridled sonic fisticuffs and enriching your understanding of the workings of concentrated economic and political power are not mutually exclusive. Knowledge is power. Arm yourself. And I loved that album description, man. It was so great.
I think if most press releases were as interesting and funny, but also thoughtful as that, I'd actually finish reading them.
Well, I just read the entire thing. So now it is committed to audio forever.
Yeah, so the name of this song means life or death, independence, in a language native to East Timor, Tetum or Tetum. I'm not sure which pronunciation is correct. And there's another slightly different translation I found: live or die, we want independence, in that same language. This was a common protest cry during the independence struggle. And Greg, I know you have some information on the history of colonialism in East Timor.
Yeah, so this is a long, drawn-out saga of colonialism and foreign rule. So the history of East Timor, which is also known as Timor-Leste or the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, is very long and very challenging, and I will boil this down as much as I possibly can. So let's go way back in time. In Southeast Asia, there's an island called Timor. It's north of Australia. The word Timor is derived from a Malay word for east, and the eastern half of this island, referred to as East Timor, The literal translation is east-east.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so Melanesians and Malay people from southern East Asia arrived at the island about 3000 BC. So over the years, Timor became a stopping point for merchants and traders who wanted sandalwood, which was a very desired resource in the island. Portugal arrived in like the 1500s, and the Dutch arrived in 1613. And the island was essentially split in two right down the middle in the 1760s. And the Portuguese took over the east half of the island, and the Dutch took over the west half of the island. And the Treaty of Lisbon in the 1800s ratified that split between the Dutch and the Portuguese. There was a huge worker rebellion in 1911 and 1912 against Portuguese occupation when there were terrible working conditions during resource extractions taking place on the island. And Portugal suppressed the rebellion. In 1942, during World War II, Japan invaded, and 40,000 Timorese died during the fight to keep the island out of Japanese control. And Japan left the island in 1945 for very obvious reasons. A few decades later, in 1975, the Timorese declared independence, but then Indonesia saw this as an opportunity, and under the Suharto regime, invaded in something called Operation Lotus just a few days later, and took over against the wishes of nations around the world. So the Timorese then fought against this occupation for over 20 years. Indonesia withdrew in 1999 under huge international pressure. The Indonesians were responsible for upwards of, over 100,000 East Timorese deaths with killing and famine. And Indonesia still controls the western half of the island to this day. But the violence that occurred in the 1970s through 1990s, there were many massacres, especially in the capital city of Dili. And I know that we're going to get into this later, but the Santa Cruz massacre in 1991 was a rallying point for independence. There were 250 unarmed civilians were slaughtered in a graveyard in Dili. Plans were floated in 1999 to give East Timor special status apart from Indonesia, but still remain a part of it. Sort of like how like Macau or Hong Kong sit with their relations to China.
Yeah, like autonomous regions.
Yeah, exactly. So among those in attendance who survived the Santa Cruz massacre is Bela Gallos, who Mataka is based on. So there were anti-independence movements and violence that led to tons more deaths. There were pro-Indonesia militias who were formed and supported by the military. And there was tremendous fear on both sides, it seemed, from people who were both pro-autonomy of Indonesia and pro-East Timorese independence. And there's also a short 1999 documentary called East Timor's Terrifying Battle for Independence, which interviews people on both sides during the conflict that engulfed the island. But 2001 saw the first East Timorese democratic elections and full independence in May of 2002. A Truth and Reconciliation investigation after the war found 102,000 deaths related to the Indonesian invasion and occupation from 74 to 99. And then just a few other random factoids that I found is that the Tetum name for the nation is Timor Lorosae, which means the rising sun of the east. And the eastern half of the island of Timor is in the Lesser Sunda Islands, which it shares with Indonesia. So, big long timeline of colonialism there. But Tetum is an Austronesian language spoken on the island of Timor. It is spoken in Bela Regency in Indonesian West Timor and across the border in East Timor as well, where it is one of two official languages. And then there are two main forms of Tetum as a language, Tetum Teric and Tetum Prasa, which is, just a whole other topic in and of itself. Obviously, all of this is incredibly simplified and boiled down and should in no way be taken as any sort of like definitive history or timeline of Timor or Timor-Leste. And as always, we strongly encourage you to do your own explorations on this topic. Some things we talk about on this show, like murders of First Nations people, addiction, fascism, massacres, we cannot truly do these topics justice in an hour. It just can't be done. And, these brief conversations on these podcasts are just, tipping points for us. They're like, teeny tiny little snapshots of these massively complex events in world history. So I don't know about you, Keith, but this episode has been very daunting to me for a long time because I know I could read about this for months and still not feel ready to record an episode about this song.
There was going to be a list of topics that I didn't even get to address.
Yeah.
So I know exactly how you feel. And I also know that the song is important to very many people for a variety of reasons. I mean, this is just an incredible track. And there's a weight in discussing the history and the lyrics here that maybe some of the other recent songs we've discussed, it's different. If that weight was still there, this definitely feels different. But I'm eager and ready to see what you have to say and to hear what you found, looking up some information to help us break this down. So, Greg, tell us about the guest for today.
So, yes, before we get into our, I'm sure to be very long conversation about the lyrics and music of this song, we do have a wonderful guest. Our guest is Willem from the Netherlands punk rock band Antillectual. Willem is the vocalist and guitarist of Antillectual, which is a great band. I got introduced to Antillectual in 2008 after I read somewhere that Chris Hand from Propaganda did a guest vocal verse on their album Start From Scratch. So I checked out the record. Chris sings on the song Cut the Ground from Under Our Feet. And after that, I added Antillectual to my playlist. But one of my favorite things is when a guest is willing and has the time to make a cover of the song of the episode they appear on. I'm thinking of our Humane Meat episode, with Lindsay from Frenzel Rom. It's awesome when that happens, and it makes me super happy. So in addition to appearing on the show as a guest to discuss his love of Propaganda, Matika Moris Ukun Rasik, and more, Willem created a beautiful acoustic cover of this tune that is really special, and I'm so glad to have his musical and conversational addition to the podcast. And what I like most about the cover is how true to the original he managed to be in an acoustic cover of this song. And if you listen closely to his guitar performances on the cover, it's pretty amazing what he was able to do, because this song does not easily translate to acoustic performance very easily. And, when trying to stick true to the original, I think he pulled off something really special. So Willem's version differs a bit from the amazing version done elsewhere by Jen Fiorentino on her YouTube channel.
Right.
So definitely go check that one out with Jen as well. But what's even cooler is that after Willem recorded his version, he sent it over to Ian Leger, the punk cellist, who did the music in an interview on our Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes episode, where he was one of the interviews with Frank Turner. So I'm really excited to have Ian back in a musical capacity. I'm very excited to have Willem's acoustic cover and also to have this fantastic interview with Willem from the great band Antillectual on the podcast. So please enjoy my chat with Willem, and we'll break down the song afterwards.
Take a trip talk, huddle tinker file, front on frat boys and prairie skinheads who will never walk a mile. Or born a murdered friend in this tiny woman's shoes. Drink up and mumble your
or abuse, I'm so humble by it all. And around the same time, I'm running with no hands, busting windows and getting busy behind the sportsplex with the buddies older. Sister decked out in his Speedo's Bella was flinching from the sting. That boat blew family planning, a boat blew harbor, and a Holocaust wedding, 25 years alive. A prison my country on the road in paradise. The shadows of Santa Cruz, she crossed her fingers behind her back and built a Waterwood Trojan horse. I lay still till the motherfuckers entered north, for as night fell she emerged with her backs under her arm, held her pledge of allegiance and her uniform. And she laid it at the gates of the general's embassy, and a whisper echoed into dawn as she disappeared.
Willem from Intellectual. Welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. It is so good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm glad to be a part of the show today.
Can you just briefly introduce yourself for the audience in case they don't already know who you are? What do you do?
Yeah, my name is Willem. I play in a Dutch punk rock band called Intellectual. We started officially with the first show in 2001, but we started touring and releasing music in 2005. And we've released 5 albums since then and toured, a lot of places. We've been to North America, South America, Russia, Japan, Europe, obviously. And we're quite active. And yeah, we people do compare us to propaganda, which I always consider a big compliment, even though it doesn't do justice to propaganda. It's always nice when people do describe us that way. So that's who I am. I play guitar and I sing and I write most of the music and the lyrics for the band.
Awesome. And I know that you have a recent record out that people in North America might have known, Bird Attack Records, yeah?
Oh right, yeah, that's our Engage album. It was released in 2016 by Bird Attack, indeed. Yeah, correct.
Awesome, cool. So, Willem, we're on a show talking about propaganda, and we're going to talk a ton about propaganda in this episode. And I'm curious how you found the band. What is your origin story of your interest in this band growing up in the Netherlands?
I think the first time I really heard the band was 1997 or so, maybe 96, 98, but around that time. And I think it was a friend of mine who popped in a tape back in the day, and he said, "This is propaganda. You should check this out." And I do remember the very first time I heard it, I wasn't too excited because I think I had been into bands like Face to Face and some more gateway bands and who didn't sound as aggressive, as snotty as propaganda did at that time. So the first time I heard them, it was How to Clean Everything, I think. I wasn't immediately a fan, but after some time I got a tape from another friend who put on How to Clean Everything on one side, and I think 10 Foot Poles Unleashed was on the other side. And So, because you have to turn around tapes, I got to listen to both sides a lot. And after some time, actually preferred the Propaganda side to Ten Foot Pole, even though I love that band as well.
Yeah.
But when I got it, I really got it, and I really loved Propaganda. And I think I after that I bought Less Talk More Rock, thinking it was an older album. So even though I did buy them chronologically, I thought it was the other way around.
Mm.
And then in 2001, when Today's Empires came out, I had a similar experience to How to Clean Everything, because when I first heard it, I was very surprised because it did not sound anything like those previous two albums. And I was a bit disappointed at first. And I thought, okay, this is not what I expected. This is not what I hoped for. But after giving it some spins, and that happens to, the best albums eventually are some of the albums you don't like at first. So that really was the case for Today's Empires. I heard that first and I thought, okay, well, let's give it some tries. But I'm not a fan, from the start. But after some spins, it definitely hit me, and it became my favorite album of all time, I think.
Yeah. How did do you have any like moments where you can remember being like, wow, this is a super special band? Like, was there anything really that jumped out at you? You're like, oh my gosh, like the moment it clicked.
I'm not sure if there was do you remember where you were when that or this happened? But I think they were the first band to, and especially with those first two albums, that sang about stuff other bands didn't sing about, or at least not that directly. And I'm not a native English speaker, so it's when you listen to foreign bands, it's like English class as well. You have to look up the words, what they are singing about, or what the lyrics are about. And with Propaganda, that was, just like Bad Religion. Yeah, we had to look up a lot of words to know what they were singing about, and which made it so interesting and so exotic. So something we had never heard before, because we got to know a lot of bands through skate videos and stuff like that. And then the message is like the second thing you get into. It's first the music and the energy coming from that, but then when you dive into the content, the lyrical content, it's a new world that opens up, and that's so interesting. And I don't know a particular moment when that happened, but I do know that bands like Propaganda, like Bad Religion, like Good Riddance, Rise Against, Strike Anywhere, bands like that, they showed me and my friends at the time that there's a next level of punk rock bands, or a deeper level of punk rock bands. They have actually something to say and something interesting to say. And I've always had an interest in politics and social change and stuff like that. So that really was best of both worlds. The energy of skate videos combined with my interest in politics and history and stuff like that. So that's what made Propaganda stand out above a lot of bands.
Yeah, and I was listening to a bunch of your music for the last couple of weeks, and songs like Priest Without a Religion, like these songs, like they seem super inspired by, striving for that higher level of ideas and putting out ideas of the way the world can be in your music, as opposed to, just singing about some other generic things. Like, you seem to really be putting forth those same kinds of approaches within your own lyrical writing as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if I was going to be very dramatic, I would say that like Today's Empires, it was released in 2001, and that's the year that we started our band. In 2005, we released our first full album. But I could say that like Today's Empires is the blueprint for our band and for what we're doing. But that's maybe a bit too much. But
that's amazing.
In a way, it's not. It's kind of true. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when did you first get to see Propaganda live?
I remember very well, or at least I remember the day very well, because it was October 22nd in 2001, and I remember so clearly because it was like a month and 11 days after 9/11, after the attacks in the US, because a lot of bands had canceled their tours and were not able to come over and play shows around that time, and I think Propaganda was the first one that did so. They played like the big hall of the Melkweg, which is like the main.
I love that place.
Yeah, you know it?
Yeah, I've been there. I've seen Mogwai there.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, it's like the place where in the 90s and early 2000s, like all the Fat Wreck and Epitaph bands came and they played like the big hall, and it was like a 1,200 capacity venue, I think 1,000, 1,200, something like that. And I'm not sure if it was sold out, but it was completely full. And I remember it was a three-band bill with Tupamaros, a band I did not know, and Planes Mistaken for Stars. So it was an atypical lineup, but it was a lot of fun. And yeah, so it was on the 2 Days Empires tour, and they played like songs from the first three albums, and it was amazing and insane, and yeah, made a lot of impact. I think I bought all the merch they brought with them at the show. And I'm glad I did, because I think they didn't come to Europe after that for 7 years, because or at least I think the next show that I saw them was 7 years later, and it was actually a show we played as well. We got to open up for them,
Oh,
but
cool.
I don't think they came to Europe in between, like in between 2001 and 2008. But correct me if I'm wrong. But so it was a lot of it made a big impression on me, and I know that I think it was also the first time they toured Europe after. I think they toured Europe in '96 on Let's Talk More Rock, but I wasn't at one of those shows. But every now and then we come or we play an old German venue, and they have a lot of old posters hanging on the walls, and then there's a tour poster of Propaganda of the Let's Talk More Rock artwork, and it says 1996. They played some really cool classic
Awesome.
venues. Yeah, and I wish I was at one of those shows. But and I think they played Amsterdam as well at a skate park at the time. But those are just stories I've heard. I wasn't there. Yeah.
Okay, so your band Intellectual has, a lot of inspiration for Propaganda. I think that if anybody goes on and puts on your records, they'll immediately hear that inspiration. Does the name of the band Intellectual have any inspiration from how Propaganda forces ideas into the ears of listeners? Does that make sense?
Or like how it's a play on words as well.
Yeah.
Not directly, or not that I remember from when we came up with that name. It's like a stupid, silly play on words I came up with in high school, I think. I mean, I think like the 90s punk rock, skate punk type of bands are not the bands to look to for band names, but for some reason we did, and we came up with this word. And it's based on the idea of being critical, being anti, but also, keeping a mind of your own, being critical to the things that you see around you, in the world around you, in your own life, but also in the scene that you're active in. So it's a combination of those things, but it's not related directly to Propaganda or what they do or their name, I think.
Okay.
No.
Gotcha. So in our private correspondence and email and stuff over the last couple of months, you mentioned that you and your band have done an entire covers set of Propaganda songs in Intellectual. Can you tell me a little bit about this covers set that you and the band did and why you decided to do that?
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that, but it came back to me when we talked about this about your podcast, and I looked up the flyer for that show, and then I thought, oh yeah, that's what it was. It was in 2003, so it's a long time ago, and it was the first incarnation of our band. And we were just having fun with a lot of friends, and it was called a Fat Wreck cover night, and it was like 8 bands. Playing cover sets of their favorite band. So it was like there were bands doing NoFX, Lagwagon, Rise Against, and Me First, and we were doing Propaganda, and it was like we butchered songs off their first 3 albums, and we played heavily simplified versions of those songs, and I think we did like 7 or 8 songs, like 25-30 minutes maybe, but yeah, it wasn't that serious. It was a lot of fun, I do remember, but it was very hard because, yeah, it was an advanced type of guitar playing I had to do, and I do remember it was very challenging. And I think I'm glad there's no audio recordings of that show. But then again, maybe for private, listening, I would have loved to listen to it.
Yeah, some nostalgia.
Yeah, exactly. But I have to say, like, one song on the set list was "Stick the Flag Up Your Ass," and I think we've been playing that song for well, maybe still till a couple of years ago, or we every now and then we in the rehearsal space we think, oh, let's give that one another try, and then we play it, and we might do it at some shows, but it's not a standard part of our set list to do a lot of covers, or and not the propaganda ones anyway.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun, and I said it was part of a big festival, and with our friends doing our favorite band, and Fedric had such a great lineup, especially at that time. So it made perfect sense to join that and be part of that.
That's awesome. Well, I know you've also collaborated with Propaganda in a few ways over the years. I know you've toured with them. I know you've played with them. Can you tell me a little bit about what stands out to you about your tour and show experiences with Propaganda? What stands out to you?
Yeah, I think like the first show we did together was, as I said, that was the first time they came back after 2001, and it was in 2008, and I think they toured on Potemkin City Limits, and they did one show in the Benelux, so we actually played with them in Belgium, and it was like a dream come true. We got to play Belgium, and we got to play with Propaganda, and it was only the second time I saw them, and the first time we got to play with them. So that was incredible, and they were still a three-piece, and we are a three-piece. So I mean, it was we were so excited to be able to do that. After that, I think the first show we got to play together was not just a show, but we got asked by their tour booker at that time, or by the band. I don't know how it exactly happened. I never dared to ask, but we got asked to join them for a European tour in 2013. So we got to join them on the bus and drive through Europe with them for
Wow.
I think 2 weeks, and it started in Scandinavia. So we played Sweden, Norway, and then went down to Germany and did France and Italy, and we ended up at Punk Rock Holiday in Slovenia. So just doing a tour like that was amazing. Doing a tour like that with Propaganda was again a dream come true, like bucket list material, like on top, like number one. And then we got to do it on a nightliner on a bus. I don't know. I know that in the US it's not that common to tour in a bus that you can also sleep on, but here in Europe it's quite common for bigger bands, but not for bands like us. So we were, that we were able to do that was like icing on the cake. It was that was really incredible that we could do that, and it also meant that we were how do you say it? We would sleep at the same place. We would be in the bus all the time. So it was a really intense experience. Not, when you're one band and you're on the same bus the whole time, that's very intense. But when you're two bands who don't know each other really, that's very intense as well. So I really tried to keep some distance and give people privacy and stuff like that. But it was a lot of fun, and I hold really great memories. And by coincidence, I think someone posted like a flashback of a photo report someone did of that tour, and it was so much fun to look back at those pictures and those times, and really good memories of that tour, and being able to see Propaganda play every night and open up for them and play to their audience. That was I can't say anything else than a dream come true, and something that meant a lot to our band and us individually as well.
Was David the Beeve was the Beeve in the band in 2013 when you toured together?
Yeah, no, he was indeed, and yeah, we met him, and they had, I don't know if you know him, but Mark Barney, their sound tech, was on tour as well. He's quite a character that gets some attention on their social media as well. So we met him, which was interesting, but he very nice guy as well. So yeah, that was an awesome experience, and I think they had a good time having us on the bus as well, because we got to tour Canada 2 years after in 2015, and I think that's the story that will stand out most to me for the rest of for a long time of my life. We actually got to play Winnipeg as well, and they came to our show when we met up again there, and that was really incredible. I mean, playing with your favorite band is amazing, but if they come to your show when you play their city, that's some next level stuff that I really appreciated a lot when that happened. Yeah, that was
very
amazing.
cool. And I know that Chris Hannah appears on your song Cut the Ground from the record Start from Scratch. How did that collaboration come about? Why Cut the Ground? Why was he on that particular song? How did that all come together?
Yeah, well, we started to work on Start from Scratch on that album, and we thought, well, what do we want to do with this album? What are do we want to do something different compared to other albums, the stuff we did before? And we thought, yeah, we should ask like someone to do guest vocals. So yeah, that could really add some extra value to the album, and we thought, well, let's aim high. Let's go to the person we would love to have most on the album. So we collectively thought of Chris Hanna to ask him. And since we had played a show together 2 years before that, we thought, well, maybe he remembers us, maybe he knows who we are, and maybe can get him to do it. Because I also heard or knew that he had like a studio in his basement, or at least a rehearsal space, or that he recorded some stuff there before. So I thought, well, if it doesn't involve a lot of extra costs or hassle, maybe he's willing to do that. And so I just sent him an email, and quite quick after that, he sent me an email saying that he was willing to give it a try, even though he also said, yeah, I have to warn you, I've done this before for other bands, but they were heavily disappointed. So beware and behold for the result that I will send you soon. But yeah, no, then like a week later, he sent the vocal lines, and it was incredible hearing his, because I recorded the demo vocals, so I already knew what it was going to sound like a bit, but then to hear him sing our song and our lyrics over our music, that was out of this world to hear that. So that was incredible. And why we picked that song, I think, like I sent him the lyrics and the music, and I said, well, I hope you can, I hope you can agree to sing these kind of lyrics, because they're about skateboarding and about companies like Nike being involved in skateboarding and underground culture and alternative sports. And I knew that he wasn't into skating or skateboarding, anything like that. But so I checked with him if he was okay to sing that, and he said, well, yeah, indeed, I'm not into skating at all, but I would love to be a part of that song, and I like the tune, so let's do it. And I think we picked it because it was the fastest song on the album, and the song that mostly, or that would fit his style and his voice best. Yeah, I think that's why we picked that song.
Awesome.
And also because it's a bridge that he does, like so it's a part on its own, but it's not a lot like a whole song or a bigger part. Like it's something else. It gives him like really his own part of the song. So I thought that would work out well with a guest vocalist and with his voice in particular.
Did that record Start from Scratch? Did that come out on vinyl anywhere?
Yeah, it is. It did. I'm thinking. I'm not sure what US label released it, because I'm sure it was released in the US. I know that we still have copies. I mean, we have a web shop, so
cool.
And if people want it, they can order it. Yeah, we can definitely help you out if people want to hear it. It's on Bandcamp. It's on Spotify. It's everywhere as well. I mean, if you just want to hear it, you can check it out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm just thinking about adding it to my own vinyl collection.
Oh yeah, sure. No, we'll make that work.
Awesome, cool.
For sure.
So, Willem, whenever I reached out to you about this project, the scope of this show is that for every episode, we talk about a different song. And I was asking you to list some of your favorite songs and to talk about the one that intrigues you the most amidst Propagandy's catalog. And the first and foremost song that you chose is Matika Moris Ukun Rasik, track 1 from Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. So first and foremost, thank you for taking the time to contribute an acoustic cover of the song, which preceded your interview here in this episode, which everybody heard before they heard us talking. Why did you pick this track as like your main song that you loved so much out of all the songs that Propagandy has done?
Yeah, it was such a difficult decision.
And it was hilarious watching you try to wrestle with it. It was great times.
Yeah, I know. I think I've sent over every track from that album. Should I do this one or do that one? Maybe this one works better. I don't know. But I knew it had to be a song of Today's Empires, because that's the album that I think influenced me most, influenced our band most. And I think I know that you've been talking about eras of Propagandy. Like they with every switching band member, they started a new era.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that when John K. Sampson left the band and Todd Kowalski joined, I think that's the biggest break in style and in the type of band they were and became, because it's not just that John, his songs are really particular and you could identify them very clearly, and the same goes for Todd, his songs, and they're sort of different compared to John's songs. But I also think that also Chris's songwriting really changed over, from those two, from Let's Talk Rock to Today's Empires, and I think they've called themselves progressive thrash or something like that. But I think Today's Empires really shows that shift in style and shows that best. And I think there's a before Today's Empires and after Today's Empire. So I really wanted to pick a song from that album, and I really love Purina Hall of Fame. And if you have to play one song to anyone that doesn't know Propaganda, I'm sure it would be Back to the Motor League to get them into the band. And I love the title track as well. But I think the song that had the biggest impression on me is the first song, because it's the first song on the album, and because it's a great track. I mean, it starts with the intro quote by Bela Gallos, and then it starts off really quietly, or at least really easily, and then kicks in, and I think it feels like the fastest song they ever played. It starts off with that, and it's so full of energy. And yeah, I think that really, as said, like the first time I heard the album, I wasn't too impressed with it, but in hindsight, I cannot really comprehend how how I had to get used to the new style, because it's definitely my favorite album of all time, and the song really kicks it off so well. So yeah, it's as said, I think this album is like kind of a blueprint for our band, or for the type of music we want to make. And yeah, and I don't know, maybe the theme of the song is not, how do you say it, the most relatable, or the most how do you say that, it's impressing or influencing, like if you stopped eating meat after nailing the car to the wall or stuff like that. But yeah, nonetheless, I think this is one of their best songs.
Yeah, well, what's really interesting, what you just said, is like, it's not about things like, giving up eating meat, but it's like forcing you to see the vastness, the hugeness of the world, and to seek to become a more global person by understanding the challenges that people face all over the planet. So, I mean, here we have this song, it's about East Timor in a lot of ways. And I had never heard of that region of the world in 2001 when this record came out. You know what I mean? It forced me to learn about a new place on the planet that I had never considered once.
No, that's true. And I think that's also a shift from How to Clean Everything and Let's Talk More Rock, where the songs are really about themselves or the scene they're active in, and maybe they're very personal experiences they talk about. And on Today's Empires, they start to sing about what people in the rest of the world, or all over the world, are experiencing. And with an experience of Bela Gallos, they teach history to a lot of people. And I think that's great. And it's also very, because Eastern Timor, you don't hear a lot about that, but I'm from the Netherlands, and our country has a long dark black page in history because of the colonization of Indonesia. So even though the Dutch didn't colonize Eastern Timor, they did colonize Indonesia. And the reason that Indonesia colonized Eastern Timor is because the Dutch had to give up Indonesia, and Indonesia thought, okay, well, now we gained independence, let's see if we can get some more territory in our newly received country, and see if we can expand it. So it's kind of connected to Dutch colonial history, which I'm not an expert in, but it sure, there's some connections there as well. So that's weird.
Very weird. I mean, that's really interesting. So let's talk a little about the lyrics. Do you have any favorite lines in the song of, like, where you really appreciate what's going on in the lyrics?
Yeah, but I think if I had to pick a favorite line, I think it's the line where the music just starts hitting, where it blasts. It's I was writing with no hands. It's because the music accelerates, but it's, that's not because I like the lyrics per se. but it's because of the function of the lyrics there in the music. But I think that's my like the most the line that sticks out or you remember best. But I think, yeah, as you said, I think I don't have a very favorite part of these lyrics, but I think as you said that these are more storytelling lyrics and these aren't as direct as the previous two albums. And but I really do appreciate that through this album you learn a lot of, as said, it's not just English. Like the first two albums may be English class for non-English speakers,
Yeah.
but this album is also English class, or
Gotcha.
I mean history class. Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. Because I mean, COINTELPRO is something I had never heard of, and the Depo-Provera birth control program is something I would have never heard of if it weren't for Propaganda. So that's something I highly appreciate of this song and this album in particular. It's and something you don't appreciate at first listening or first reading, but if you dive into it, it makes the album so much more interesting and so much deeper and and so much more contentful than the first two albums, but than any other band out there.
Whenever we talked about doing this show and I asked you about doing an acoustic cover of this song, again, thank you so much for doing that. I know that you had the time and the space to do this right now because bands aren't on the road at the moment. But I'm curious about your adaptation process about converting this song to the acoustic guitar. Can you describe what the process was like of putting together the cover version that you did?
Yeah, well, when you asked me to, can you do an acoustic version, I thought, oh, well, this, I'm not sure if it's the most logical song to cover acoustically, but yeah, Corona time, so I had some time on my hands, and I love a challenge. So I thought, yeah, let's give it a try. I mean, I love that song, and I want to be able to play it, and I know that Jen Fiorentino already did it, so it should be possible. But I also thought, well, if I'm going to do it, I want to give it another spin, or make it sound a little different than the way Jen did it, and she did it incredibly. So it was hard for me to top that, and I'm not going to say I did because I have very limited. I don't usually play acoustic guitar, and I have very limited recording skills or gear. So it's whatever I could do in my bedroom. But I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm not going to do a live recording as Jen did, but I did record some more lines, like two guitar lines, and so left and right. And I tried to stay a little closer to the original because she made a slower version, and when the pace or the tempo really increases, she keeps the tempo a little slower. And I tried to give it a little more. I'm not going to say energy, but see if I could keep a little more of the original tempo in there, and I hope that worked a bit. And and doing so, I tried to keep the original guitar parts the way Chris plays them. I tried to recreate them on acoustic guitar, which is quite difficult, but I hope it worked out a bit.
Were there any parts of the song that were like particularly challenging whenever you were learning to do it?
Oh yeah, well, you have especially the instrumental breaks because they change in measure as well. Like the whole song is 4/4, but the instrumental breaks, they're 3/4. So you have to change the pace, the tempo, and it sounds incredible on the album, but it never made sense to me until I started counting those parts. And then, not until then, only then I found out that it's 3/4 instead of 4/4. So that really took me some time to figure that out and get that, and to play that acoustically as well, because it's a bit faster. It was a lot of fun to find that out and to play that and to record that and to also to translate it from electric to acoustic and from drum beats and emphasis to recreate that on an acoustic guitar, which was difficult. But I said I hope it works out.
Awesome. Well, Willem, I'm so delighted by your participation, to talk about Mateka, but also to, push your own understanding of this song, by diving a little bit into the Dutch colonial history behind it and its connection there, but also learning it and seeing new things within the music that you hadn't noticed before. That is so, so cool. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you and your band if they want to know more about your work?
Oh yeah, of course. Like we're pretty much everywhere where you would want to look for a band. We're on Spotify, we're on Bandcamp, YouTube, and all social media like Facebook and Instagram. But if you wanna like reach out personally or get some merchandise or sign up for our newsletter, which we also have, you can do all that on our website, and that's at antilectual.com. So yeah, hope to see you at one of those maybe.
The party's older. Sister decked out in her speedos follow, switching from the sting. A tempo very family planning.
Well, that was my chat with Willem from Intellectual, and you all heard his fantastic acoustic cover as well. So thank you to Willem for the guitars and vocals on that, and thanks to Ian for the cello on that. Make sure to go check out all their social medias. Go find Ian the Punk Cellist and go find all of Intellectual's fantastic stuff. Highly recommended, pretty much across the board. Great friends of the podcast, great fellas, and very creative folks. So I'm really delighted by those. So Keith, let's dive into the music for Mateka Moris Ukun Rasik. What do you think?
Yeah, I would like to start with the music. And Greg, we addressed some of the band's grievances with today's Empires, particularly Chris's maybe distaste for the guitar tones and the drums, which he talks about in far more articulate detail on his Patreon episode for Purina Hall of Fame. But I think the clean intro, the clean guitar in the intro stands out to me so much. I mean, although this album is frenetic, I can't help but kind of wish that those calm moments popped up a little bit more on this release.
The amazing opening riff. It's really incredible to me that if you consider the spoken word intro of the Bella Gallos speech, and then you consider the slow guitar intro, dickhead shit talk, the album doesn't really kick in to full gear until after the 1 minute mark because of the intro speech and the long 30+ second intro where it's just Chris and his guitar with like the other two guys kind of like filling in the gaps underneath the vocals. But like if you compare the slower start to this album, which winds up being such a blazing album, and you compare it to the openings with Anti-Manifesto and Apparently I'm a PC Fascist on the first two full lengths, this is a massive shift in how they approach the start of the record for this third record.
It's very deceptive in a way. And that opening riff, its speed, its timbre, they're absolutely iconic. And although I listened to the albums that came out after this far more than today's Empires, perhaps it's because it's the first song that I heard from the band, Mateka is just quintessential propaganda for me. I mean, it almost sounds too fast. Sometimes I get this feeling it's kind of like if you try listening to a podcast or an audiobook at like 1 1/5 times speed and it sounds a little unnatural. It is that fast.
Yeah, and what's really amazing is, I've seen a bunch of live performance videos of this song on YouTube, one in Leeds, one in Sydney that are recorded really, really well. I think everybody's probably seen both of those at this point. One is the Mosh Cam set, and the other one is the lead set made by, I think it was Newspeak Productions. I can't remember, but
yes.
Anyway, yeah, is that right? Okay. What's so funny about this is we have another interview recorded with a different guest who we haven't announced yet. We haven't put out that episode, but it's somebody who used to work at, who's like has worked at Fat Records in the past. And they said that when this came across their desk, everybody like gathered around and like they were absolutely blown away as a staff listening to this record, because the gap had been so huge between Let's Talk More Rock and the release of Today's Empires that this completely blew everybody out of the water because it was such a stylistic shift from the previous record.
It transitions from that blazing main riff to sort of an abrasive guitar lead that follows Depo-Provera family, that part, while still maintaining speed, injecting the song with this eerie and uncomfortable quality that I think reminds the listeners it's not just about entertainment, right? This isn't just about listening to a band. This is really about something bigger.
Yeah. When I first heard this, I was completely blown away by the drum performance on this song as well. So we can keep talking about the guitars, but I want to mix in a little bit of drums too. The drums underneath the intro riff are so cool. Like it's difficult for me to capture why I think it's so cool, but the way they perfectly follow the lyrics underneath "or mourn a murdered friend in this tiny woman's shoes," it's like da 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 do do ba ba do ba do. He's got this rhythm going to where he's playing what Chris is singing. Other lines like give the drums and vocals almost a rhythm section feel. Like normally the drums and the bass are the rhythm section, but the vocals over the drums in this Propaganda song is such a unique aspect of the performance. Just listen to Jord play when Chris sings "Drink up and mumble your abuse, I'm still humbled by it all." Jord plays that on his drums. It's ridiculous. It's crazy how Jord is like singing the vocals through the drum set.
Or mourn a murdered friend in this tiny woman's shoes. Drink up and mumble your abuse, I'm still humbled by it.
Perfectly underneath what Chris is singing. It's nuts. And like the drum transition after flinching from the sting on drums just shows how Jord is like the bridge between the parts so much for this band. And you mentioned the Depo-Provera family planning part. Her own Pearl Harbor, Holocaust spanning 25 years of life is like an amazing preview. So what Jord's playing on that Depo-Provera family planning part, and like just after it, it's like an amazing preview for drum sounds that would appear later on songs like Tertium Non Datur. He's got the really super fast part, but then Jord does this like slower, almost like, you know, this chugging underbeat where that kind of drives songs like the speed of Tertium Non Datur, but we kind of see that from Jord on this song as well in the slower part. It's just wild, man.
Yeah, and related to my favorite thing that Jord does on this song, the guitar lick under or just after the Shadow Santa Cruz, that part, when I heard that the first time, I knew, Greg, I was going to be in for the long haul with this band.
Yeah.
There's that just super fast picking, and it doesn't even give me goosebumps. It honestly gives me butterflies every time I hear that riff. And then when it's played for an extended several measures later on toward the end of the song, and Jord's drumming there that accompanies that riff, there's like those massive splashes. There's like those unexpected lightning fills. It's incredible. I mean, it transforms a song that sounds like the lug nuts spinning loose on the car, just careening out of control, into a clearly audible control and precision and technicality, while not jeopardizing, you know, emotion or humane quality for the sake of sounding extreme or fast for fast sake. It's masterful.
Yeah, well, and this is also the first like full length with Todd on bass, and Todd really just blows it out of the water on this, like on this song too. There's like this amazing little bass fill transition back into the fast riff after the Shadow of Santa Cruz, and then Todd goes on this little run, and I was like, oh yeah, and it just absolutely was fantastic. And, you know, the vocal performance on this song, so Chris is totally an instrument as well, but this solidifies the new era of Chris to me. Like I went back and listened to some tunes from Less Talk More Rock today to compare his vocal delivery on this sound on Empires. Even in the Less Talk More Rock album, which is a far cleaner vocal approach to compared to How to Clean Everything,
Oh, for sure.
I can still hear the old Chris
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Less Talk More Rock. Like it's the same guy. You know what I
Same.
mean? This
I
is a
thought they had
different,
got a different singer.
exact.
Like when
This
I
is a
went
new
back
guy.
and I bought, right. Yeah.
It's like it is a new guy. You know what I mean? And so like 5 years between records there. I mean, it's a different guy. It's a different sound. It's a different band. It's a different bass player. It's a different feel. And I don't know, man, this was like the craziest musical transition I've ever seen a band that I really love undergo within one record, except for maybe Saves the Day or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But this is a change that was for me undeniably for the better. And I listened to this thing constantly.
Yeah, I'm going to jump back to Todd. He adds so much depth to the music here. He accentuates the melodies, he accentuates the momentum, but also like the heartbreak and the urgency in both the music and the lyrics. I also think he adds much needed warmth, given the fact that the guitar tones are a little shrill
Yeah.
and a little two dimensional. But it kind of, I say that as a critique over time once I've gotten the other albums and have listened to them all comparatively. While I love Chris's vocal style from Empires On, I noticed this week watching some of the videos that you already mentioned in Australia and then in the UK, those live performances, he imparts a little bit more emotion. I mean, just check out the version in Leeds posted by the YouTube channel you said, Productions Newspeak, and it was posted in 2010. When Chris sings, I'm still humbled by it all, there's just this beautiful tenderness in the inflection of his voice. And I think he clearly means those words, perhaps even more so when he first wrote them.
Yeah, and I love the differences in the way that he sings. There's little parts where he sings them slightly differently on the live version, probably because it's easier to sing with what he's playing on the guitar. But he's like, but the whisper echoes into dawn as it disappear. And I just love the way that he changes the flow of the words over the live version. And I don't even mind it as well, because I know that it's like a method of convenience for singing something a little more effectively while also playing these riffs. It's just very endearing to me watching the little adjustments that he makes live in order to be able to deliver this one to the best of his ability, because this is such a wild song.
It's hard for me to sum up what I think about the music, really. So I found 2 older reviews with these real quick tidbits encapsulate what I think about this song and this album. So there's a Sputnik music review from 2005, and it said, the album as a whole is very fast, very pissed, and just flat out vicious.
Yeah.
The tone of the record is far angrier, frustrated, and has lost much of the sarcastic humor the band had been known for. But luckily, all that was left was the venom, which is quite potent. And another review from Punk News, written and posted in 2001, states, faster, heavier, smarter, plus hours of socio-political reading and multimedia from some of the most dissenting bastards on the continent. Why won't it let me post 6 stars?
Yeah. What's really interesting to me as well is some of Chris's own commentary and critiques about the sound of the record over the years, like especially with like the drum editing and as well the guitar tones. But man, it's a special one to me. Like whenever we did our Back to the Motor League episode and our Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes episode, I was like almost scared to talk about them because this album means so much to me in the grand scheme of my musical fandom of any music I've ever listened to. This is just such a special record in general, and this song that kicks it off is just held such a special place in my heart for all of my musical years. And this came out when I was 17 years old. So it hit me right at that absolutely perfect time in my life where, I was still listening to like And Justice for All and stuff like that. Some Megadeth, but I was also like listening to a bunch of Bad Religion. So this album just hit me square at the time where I was like dabbling in both worlds of metal and punk. And then this one just seamlessly crossed that divide drew me in, and I was like, well, this is it. This is it for me. And I've never stopped thinking that.
When I mentioned the critiques about the production, I definitely don't mean them in terms of being an obstacle
Right.
that take anything away from the listening experience of enjoying and consuming this record. It's just more of an observation. And I listen to some of the worst, most obnoxious metal on earth with the worst production. So again, this is more of just like a comparison with my familiarity with the band's later discography.
Yeah, man. Well, any other words about the music, or do you think that we should dive into the words, which are going to take us a while, I have a feeling?
I say let's start breaking down the lyrics.
All right. So it starts off with this Bela Gallos speech recorded. Tell me what your thoughts are on the intro section where it is a speech with a lively and noisy crowd.
Yeah, for the longest time, I misunderstood the purpose of that sample, which is not the fault of the artist. That's clearly me just misunderstanding something. I kind of heard the intro as like these songs that will follow on the album are radical, they're revolutionary, they're going to get the band singled out as potential targets. But that, again, that's on me. I focused on the wrong part of the clip, and I failed to make the connection between the obnoxious, clamoring crowd referenced in the first lines, people who want a night out, but they're unwilling to listen to someone's story. And I'm almost certain I heard an interview where either Jord or Todd said that Bela Gallos spoke at Todd's first propaganda show. I tried to go back and find it, but I couldn't confirm that. So if anyone can comment, we would love for that confirmation or rejection.
Yeah, I'd love to know who saw Todd's first show. That'd be really cool. Well, here is the text of the opening audio from Bela Gallos. This is what it says on the beginning of the record. This is the few songs that belong to these people, and I hope that one day I'm going to sing this song to my country. This song never allowed to sing in my own country, and thousands of people have been killed because of singing this song, and I'm proud tonight that I'm singing to all of you. I had this realization today. This was really interesting to me. So the first line is dickhead shit talk. So the people talking during the audio of the speech, like if you listen to the audio carefully of the speech in the beginning of the song, there's a bunch of people clearly having normal conversations, like in the audio, in the foreground. Maybe this means they're not really listening to the amazing story that's being told through the microphone by the person on the stage. And I'm wondering, are these people the dickheads that the first line of the song refers to?
Right. Yes.
Like, was Chris standing there with a recorder in a crowd watching this speech and was like covertly recording the speech? Like, I've been to like events where I had like my voice memos running on my phone so that I could like listen back. Like, I think I have a Salman Rushdie speech from a few years ago that I recorded because he had so many amazing quotes that I wanted to be able to go back and check. I was like, who recorded this? I couldn't find out. And I'm wondering if Chris was like at an event and was recording this and these people wouldn't shut up in front of him. And it reminds me of like being at like an Iron and Wine concert and people at the bar are talking the entire show over this incredibly quiet guy with his guitar, oblivious to the fact that every person in the place can hear every word they say. Only this version is way worse because instead of Iron and Wine getting talked over, it's somebody telling their story of massive human rights violations and surviving some horrible things in their country. And people are like, blah, 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 blah. So I was wondering if the people talking on the opening audio clip are the dickheads in Dickhead Shit Talk.
I think it's a propaganda show.
Oh my gosh.
I think it was recorded at a propaganda show. Like, so Bela Gallos spoke, before a couple shows. I think if it was in the later 90s or if it was even later, I think they were recording it because Bela Gallos was speaking. And I love this idea of how they've taken their vitriol and their ability to critique, the masses. So like kind of starting bigger with society and, like then punk, and then even more specifically their own fans. That's really what I think. putting onto a record their own fans, are there to see the band, missing the purpose of why they're there in the first place.
Oh man. So now I'm really mad because now I really do want Chris to make a Patreon episode about Mate Ka so that he can talk about that opening clip. So Chris, if you hear this, I'm definitely curious where that clip comes from, and hearing your backstory on that will be really tremendous. So I look forward to that in the future. Anyway, so we have this opening line. Dickhead shit talk, huddled single file, first word frat boys, and prairie skinheads who will never walk a mile or mourn a murdered friend in this tiny woman's shoes. Drink up and mumble your abuse. I'm still humbled by it all. I love the notion of being humbled by another person's story, being moved by somebody's storytelling, realizing how tremendously different our life experiences are across humanity. Like, my life has been so privileged, so lucky, so rich and full of amazing experiences all over the world. I've gotten to do so much. Like I've said elsewhere on another episode, I think it was the Bringer of Greater Things episode, I've never run for my life in fear. I've never faced real danger. My life hasn't ever been at risk of being lost. So the imagery of Chris standing, listening to Bella speak while other people are like, whatever, dude, is awesome to me, because people who are so lucky are often so oblivious to the suffering of people around the world, which is why I spoke so much about declining refugee rates in that Bringer of Greater Things episode. They won't be welcoming. It just speaks to what this first line really says to me. So something interesting now, after the few years we've had recently, I doubt the haters in a crowd would be doing much mumbling. So Chris talks about mumbling your abuse. I don't think they're going to be mumbling anymore. We're in such a worse place with validated racism and bigotry in 2020 now, I think, that I have little doubt that the abuse I think it would just be yelled outright. I don't think it would be mumbled. Like, anybody who used to mumble now seems to be yelling and attaching giant flags to the back of their pickup trucks.
Greg, this reminds me of something I might have mentioned previously from Peter Singer. Whenever he observes someone in the US or the UK or Canada buying a lottery ticket, he can't help but think that that person wants to win the lottery twice. How few people seem to acknowledge the fortune of where they're born. And if they are aware of it, how few actually do something with it. And I definitely mean myself included, but that's just an incredible line. Like, drink up and mumble your abuse. Like, I think this is kind of drawing a line in the sand, no longer wanting to maybe turn away, alienate the listeners, that, the people who show up to party and stage dive, those people who reduce radical music and movements to a scene, but just not understanding them and therefore just ignoring them. How he's talking about the audiences here is so different.
Yeah. And then we have the next line in the song. Around the same time, I was riding with no hands, busting windows and getting busy behind the sportsplex with Labani's older sister decked out in her Speedos, while Bella was flinching from the sting of a Depo-Provera family planning. From the Mayo Clinic, I found out that Depo-Provera, which I already knew this, but I'm defining it clinically, I guess, is a well-known brand name for medroxyprogesterone acetate, a contraceptive injection that contains the hormone progestin. Depo-Provera is given as an injection every 3 months, and Depo-Provera typically suppresses ovulation, keeping ovaries from releasing an egg, and it also thickens cervical mucus to keep sperm from reaching the egg. So now I just said the word Depo-Provera like 3 times, and I just realized how challenging it is to say. So good on Chris for putting such a hard word to even say, let alone sing, into one of the band's most well-known songs. But I was thinking a little bit about this timeline that Chris mentions in this, because for the longest time I was like, Labani's sister, Sportsplex? What the heck is he talking about? I found out that Bella Gallos was born in 1972 and was injected with Depo-Provera at age 13. And I think Chris might be 1 to 2 years older than Bella, but I know they're extremely close in age. So Chris may have been 15 when Bella was getting injected against her will with a birth control drug, and it's a startling comparison.
Yeah.
And the comparisons and contrasts we make with our life compared to someone else's life is truly astounding. Like while Chris was 15 and goofing off with his pals and hooking up with Labani's sister, Bella was getting forced sterilized by a Western-backed invading military. And so that's really startling. You know, Chris is like playing hockey and like going to the arena and like hanging out and like riding his bike and like throwing his hands in the air like, woo, look at me. While this other person on the other side of the world who lives under military occupation by an invading country's military force is being lined up in a classroom being shot up with birth control drugs when she's like 13 years old. Side note, I wonder how Labani's older sister feels about being mentioned in the lyrics of this song. And if that is a real example, I would wager a lot of people in the world know who she is. So I'm wondering if Labani's sister is like, oh God, I can't believe I'm in that song. But at first I thought he was saying LaPlante's older sister. And I was thinking about, you know, the LaPlante song or LaPlante song from the Where Quantity is Job Number One compilation, where they did the revised version with the, hey, Jord, how's it going? Chicken fight. And I was like, oh, I wonder if it's LaPlante from the LaPlante song fame, but apparently it's Labante's older sister. So I'm wondering if it's the same guy and the name was changed. Ooh, intrigue and scandal.
Greg, I never really made a connection between this song and some of the themes in Dark Matters until this week. I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of very similar, but just on a global scale. You know, how drastically different lives could be, in this case, by sheer dint of birthplace. So how many things they have in common, their age, for example.
Yeah.
But how disparate those lived experiences were. With the line, her own Pearl Harbor and Holocaust spanning 25 years to life, I want to quickly address something written by Gregory Stanton, who was a research professor in genocide studies and prevention at George Mason University. He was also the founder of Genocide Watch, which he wrote a paper identifying what he calls as the 10 stages or steps of genocide. And Greg, some of the things that you've already mentioned fall under this. While we won't specifically name each one when it comes up, I really want you, the listeners, to think about these in assessing ultimately how this event qualifies as a genocide, right? The intentional mass killing of an entire group of people based off of their ethnicity, religion, or some other factor. So the 10 stages include 1, classification. People are divided into groups, them and us, an in-group and an out-group. There is the second stage, symbolization. Symbols may be forced upon unwilling members of the targeted groups of the victims. The third stage is discrimination. The government excludes groups from full access to civil rights. The fourth step is dehumanization. The humanity of the targeted group is denied, equating them with animals, insects, or diseases. Just think about how Jews were depicted during the Holocaust, or the use of words like cockroaches during the Rwandan genocide.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned already the East Timor Commission of Reception, the Truth and Reconciliation report. It concluded that sexual violations were used as a tool of terror and degradation, involving practices such as forcing prisoners to walk long distances in East Timor through communities while naked, public rape, and multiple instances of rape and torture in military posts. And the purpose was also to humiliate and dehumanize the East Timorese people. It was an attempt to destroy their will to resist, to reinforce the reality that they were utterly powerless and subject to the cruel and inhumane whims of those who controlled the situation with guns. The fifth stage is organization. Special military units or militias are trained and armed. That leads to 6, polarization. The in-group broadcasts polarizing propaganda and misinformation about the outgroup or the target group. The seventh stage is preparation. Mass killing is planned and victims are targeted due to ethnicity or due to religion. The eighth is persecution. Victims are forcibly removed and displaced into ghettos and concentration camps. And it's important to note that the Timorese language was banned. People were moved off their land. Indonesians moved into those communities to dilute the population of the East Timorese. In the 1970s and 80s, thousands died in resettlement camps due to famine, as they were forced to live in places that were arid. It wasn't farmable land. The ninth stage is extermination. It is extermination to the killers because they do not believe their victims to be fully human. And then the final part is denial. The government or military denies that any crime was committed, and a former Indonesian ambassador to the UN, Wisner Murti, denied that this was a genocide, saying it was abuse of military authority, but not actually genocide. So, I mean, based on this model, based on some things that you've already heard or what Greg and I will continue to share, I think it's really clear that the government of Indonesia committed genocide against the Timorese.
And we also have to think about the complicity of other nations as well. Whenever I was digging around for this episode, I found that Jord said in an interview that Merdeka means independence or death, which was a slogan used by East Timorese seeking independence from Indonesia, who occupied East Timor with primarily U.S. help, but also with Canadian assistance and complicity. Whenever you think about killings during this time period, the weapons that were used by the Indonesian military during massacres were provided by the United States. There's a really great essay on propaganda.com on the lyrics for Merdeka, which says, although she focused on her personal experience as a young survivor of the Indonesian occupation, Bella also addressed U.S. complicity in the invasion and occupation of East Timor and the United States government's continuing military and economic support for the brutal Suharto regime, which just goes to reinforce all of the ways that the United States has propped up dictatorial regimes around the world for many, many decades now at this point, and how we are not exactly the bastion of liberty and justice and freedom that we so often claim to be. And this is just one more tick in the column against our intervention record abroad.
The lyric, "A prison my country underwrote in paradise," is so scathing. I found a few helpful resources regarding the Indonesian occupation and the atrocities committed. One that I would point the listeners to is from Yale University's Genocide Studies program. This lyric could easily, when saying my country, that could mean Canada, that could be the UK, that could be Australia, or as you said, Greg, the United States. I mean, for example, the US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger gave a green light to Suharto's invasion, and there was tacit support from the rest of the White House. Gerald Ford visited in 1975, giving what investigative journalist John Pilger calls the big wink in his documentary Death of a Nation, The East Timor Conspiracy. Indonesia invaded East Timor literally the day after Gerald Ford flew out of Jakarta.
Wow.
So ambassadors of Britain, Australia, and the United States all sent messages from Jakarta that showed their knowledge of military intervention, ultimately displayed deference to the government of Indonesia. So the United States, the United States, declassified documents also reveal that Kissinger fully understood that the invasion of East Timor involved the illegal use of U.S. supplied military equipment because it was not used in self-defense as required by law. And in January of 1976, the American ambassador to the UN, Daniel Moynihan, sent a secret cable to Kissinger, updating him on his success of blocking UN action. And he said, "Department of State desired that the United Nations prove utterly ineffective. This task was given to me, and I carried it through with no inconsiderable success. So Indonesia was a major site of U.S. energy and raw materials investment and an important petroleum exporter. It's also strategically located near vital shipping lanes. Nixon had even called Indonesia the greatest prize in Southeast Asia. So couple that with Cold War politics, as there was false propaganda coming from Suharto in Jakarta claiming that the East Timorese were communists. Moving on to Australia, despite being promised aid and support for assisting the Australians and the Allies during World War II, Australia saw Indonesia as a powerful ally to the North and refused to intervene and didn't do so until later on in the 90s. And as you mentioned already with the sale of military material, Great Britain sold Hawk aircrafts, missiles, helicopters, frigates, armored vehicles, and military communication technology, all to Indonesia. While courting the government in Jakarta, Margaret Thatcher received an award from the Suharto regime.
Jeez, man.
Saying, "I am proud to be one of you." And
Ugh.
back home, British politicians supported the sale of this material, saying it would create jobs.
This is my favorite thing about doing this show with you, Keith, is that each of us go away for a week and we do all of our reading and we find everything that we want to talk about. And then I didn't know any of that. I've been looking at this topic now for the last 3 weeks off and on. I didn't know any of those things that you just said. The big wink with Ford, that's heavy stuff, man. Should we get into the Santa Cruz line within the song?
Yeah, what did you find out about Santa Cruz?
So check this out. As everybody knows, the lyric is, "And in the shadows of Santa Cruz, she crossed her fingers behind her back." So in late October 1991, Indonesian troops found a group of resistance members who wanted independence for East Timor, and they found them in a church in Dili, the capital of Timor-Leste. So a confrontation broke out, leaving a pro-integration activist and a pro-independence activist dead. Sebastião Gomes was a supporter of independence for East Timor, who was taken out of the church and shot by Indonesian troops. And integration activist Afonso Henriquez was stabbed and killed during the fight as well. The Santa Cruz massacre, so In the Shadows of Santa Cruz, in the song is about this massacre that occurred. And it was also called the Dili Massacre, but this was a shooting of around 250 East Timorese pro-independence demonstrators in the Santa Cruz Cemetery in the capital city of Dili on the 12th of November in 1991. During the Indonesian occupation of East Timor is part of the East Timorese genocide that we've been talking about. So the pro-independence protesters were memorializing Gomez, who was killed when the violence occurred, and the march was organized by Bela Gallos's uncle, Constancio Pinto. And I love the imagery of Bela Gallos crossing her fingers behind her back because, and this is from Propaganda's website, in the aftermath of the massacre, which Bella survived, she joined the Indonesian Military Youth Corps to mask her involvement in the pro-independence demonstration. Pro-independence demonstrators were basically looked for, hunted down. And so she goes and says, I want to join the Indonesian Military Youth Corps. And they're like, oh, what a patriot. So for 3 years after the massacre, the Indonesian authorities trained her to fight against her own people. So she was when she took basically the oath or whatever, it was crossing your fingers to say that you're I'm telling a lie right now, but you cross your fingers behind your back and you take your oath, but you're not telling the truth. During this time, Bella used her army salary to help the resistance movement.
That's awesome.
I know.
Man.
Something else that I discovered, and I know that you found this too, was that Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! Was at the Santa Cruz massacre and recorded the whole thing, which is super intense because Goodman was beaten and her colleague Alan Nairn got a fractured skull while protecting Amy Goodman from getting beaten by the Indonesian military at the Santa Cruz massacre.
And this is a really pivotal moment because like other government crackdowns and crimes against humanity and genocides, there was this stifling media blackout amidst Indonesia's occupation. I have to say, Greg, I'm humbled by the resolve and the courage of those who brought word to the outside world. I learned about these two nuns in Portugal who received a letter that was smuggled out of East Timor, written by a priest describing attacks by land, sea, and air, stating, "Terror and arbitrary imprisonment is our daily bread." And then related to the mass, the killing of Sebastio Gomez that you mentioned. So there's this Catholic mass and rally planned. There was a 2-kilometer march between the church and the graveyard where he was interned. And according to the British journalist Max Stahl, who was present and filmed the rally and the subsequent massacre, he said everyone knew the military would respond to the rally with an attack. They just didn't know what exactly they would do or when. So as the Timorese marchers left the church, they removed their t-shirts to reveal that underneath they had on different t-shirts with banners of the Fretland Independence Movement, the pro-independence government. They marched right past the military, staring at them, who had never seen such outward display of resistance. So in filming this, Max Stahl, his footage, helped disprove the rhetoric coming from Suharto that the older Timorese populations wanted independence, but the younger generations actually supported cultural and political assimilation. So the military watched like mouths agape, astonished at this act. As it began, Max Stahl turned on his camera and started filming again. These attacks against unarmed citizens, crowds shot at point blank range without provocation and without a warning from the soldiers themselves. He eventually hid in a cemetery behind a tombstone as the military deployed bayonets, stabbing the injured civilians who had fallen to the ground. And Max remembered as he hid, he saw next to him and he filmed him, a young man aiding another severely wounded marcher who was shot in the chest or stomach, cradling this mortally wounded boy, staring at the soldiers, despite having the chance to escape. And he didn't even know the person. That is power. That is heroism, that he was willing to die before he would sacrifice his humanity and convictions. And that's courage that I will never know and understand.
Never.
So Max hid the footage in a recently dug grave because he knew it would be confiscated and he could possibly be killed. And there were other journalists who tried to raise the alarm in hopes of inspiring Western countries to intervene. One example was Greg Shackleton, who was hung by his feet and castrated. Max Stahl retrieved the footage immediately after he was released following his arrest. He smuggled it out of the country within days of the Santa Cruz massacre. All of this bringing international focus to the violence and struggle for independence in East Timor.
Ugh. Well, and speaking of Max Stahl, I found some more recent information involving Amy Goodman, Constancio Pinto, who's Bela Gallos' uncle, and organized that march that wound up leading to the massacre at Santa Cruz Cemetery, and also Max Stahl. So on the 25th anniversary of the massacre, which was 4 years ago, because it's been 29 years since this happened, I found that Amy Goodman interviewed Constancio Pinto, the lead organizer of the pro-independence march, who is also a Timor-Leste government minister and former ambassador to the U.S., Canada, and Mexico for Timor-Leste. And this is what Constancio Pinto had to say 4 years ago. Well, the Santa Cruz massacre for us is a national day. It's a turning point for the struggle of Timor-Leste pursuing independence. It took so long, over 20 years, to get the world to know the suffering that we have endured during the Indonesian occupation, and therefore we honor this day, the 25th anniversary of the massacre, where 270 lives were taken by the Indonesian army in a cold-blooded way. We continue to do this in order to keep the flame of our spirit, nationalism, and patriotic sentiment among the young people, because the young people sometimes they think that independence was a gift given by the Indonesians. So we have to tell them, maintain this spirit that the independence was a process and it took a long time. And many of our family, our Timorese citizens, lost their life for that, for this independence. And of course, we continue to celebrate this also in honor of the contribution of the international community, especially the journalists, people like yourself, Amy Goodman, Max Stahl, and others, because you were the people who, although Timor-Leste was difficult to get into, you managed to go to Timor and cover the stories and then publish it abroad. Without you, I think the world may have not yet known what's happened in Timor-Leste. The independence of Timor-Leste may also be delayed. So that's why we continue to do this. And for us, 25 years is an important day for us, 25 years. So that reinforces the importance of everything that Max Stahl managed to do, and also Amy Goodman and Alan Nairn, who were there on that day to get that footage. I mean, it's truly incredible.
And if I remember correctly, he still lives in Dili, and he oversees an archive of footage and photographs to commemorate the genocide there.
Wow. Well, and then we have the next lyric, which is built Suharto a Trojan horse. And a name that really hasn't come up for me yet much in this conversation is President Suharto, who was in control of Indonesia during this time period. He was also a military general in Indonesia before he was president. He was president for 31 years from 1967 to 1998. And so whenever I think about presidents not agreeing to things like peaceful transfers of power, I think about people who wind up being president for 31 years and who oversee horrendous human rights abuses. So that's got me thinking a lot. Whenever I saw 31 years, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm glad I don't live in a place like that yet. I don't live in a place like that yet. So Suharto wrested power from the former president and did his best to purge the country of all the former president's influence. The former president, his name was Sukarno. Suharto had a policy which he called de-Sukarnoization, where he removed all influence of the previous president with his new order government. So bust out the old order of Sukarno, and this is the new order of Suharto. I love the imagery of the Trojan horse because, as we know, Bella was like at the Santa Cruz massacre and her uncle organized it, and then she infiltrated the Indonesian youth military group that she joined where they trained her to fight. And so she was the Trojan horse, man. The Trojan horse is a story from the Trojan War about the subterfuge that the Greeks used to enter the independent city of Troy and then win the war under cover of darkness. So it was a trick enacted as a strategy. So in this instance, Gallos, seeking to hide her involvement in the pro-independence march by posing as an Indonesian integration person, hid in plain sight, which leads us to the next line, and lay still till the motherfucker sent her north, where as night fell, she emerged with a box under her arm that held her pledge of allegiance and her uniform. So Propaganda's website says in 1994, after months of interrogation and instruction, the Indonesian government selected Bella to represent East Timorese youth in the Canada World Youth Program. So she was so well trained, so trusted, and so diehard with Indonesian and East Timorese integration that they sent her abroad almost like a diplomatic representative of Timorese youth. So she was super well trained, and she was going to speak to the Canadian media and portray Suharto's propaganda as like being super awesome. And she was like the typical young Timorese, super educated and successful and very pro-integration. But then right when she got there, she defected in Canada with the help of her uncle, Constancio Pinto, who had escaped East Timor shortly after the Dili massacre. So she was like hiding in plain sight, out of the country, defects, and then voila, she's out. So she was like this like Trojan horse hiding in plain sight until she got out, and then she blew the cover off of the entire story.
That's absolutely amazing, man.
I don't know about you, man, but the very end of the song where the whisper, the truth will set my people free. That's like Oh, man. I know that like one of my favorite moments in Propaganda is in supporting cast where Chris goes, yes. And there's
Yeah.
but the truth will set my people free. I just can't even believe how good that whisper is into that outro riff. You know, post Affection, Bella like toured Canada a bunch, speaking about East Timor. She was involved with the East Timor Action Network, which is now a U.S.-based grassroots organization working in solidarity with the people of Timor-Leste, West Papua, and Indonesia. The ETAN provides information about Timor-Leste, which was, you know, invaded and subjugated by the U.S. ally Indonesia in 1975, as you talked about with
Yeah.
Gerald Ford's Big Wink. I mean, that is super crazy. And, you know, Timor-Leste got their independence in 2002, and the ETAN, East Timor Action Network, does tons of work to educate, organize, advocate, you know, involving the crimes against humanity, war crimes, human rights violations in East Timor and elsewhere. So it's an organization that, you know, supports like democratic development in East Timor and just helps the country move forward. But I love the truth will set my people free line because in January of 96, Benjamin Parwado, the Indonesian ambassador to Canada, sought out Bela Gallos's mother and told her to silence her daughter who had defected. And because the event was like causing public outcry, and the Canadian Department of External Affairs rebuked the ambassador. So he went and hunted down Bela Gallos's mom and says, you better make your daughter shut up. So the truth, which she was speaking, was very much a pain in the rear of the people who were keeping her people not free. You know, and then post-independence, Bella does return to East Timor, and she has since done work for the UN. She founded a nonprofit environmental school. She's delivered TED Talks, which you can find on YouTube. Just look Bela Gallos TED, and you'll find her TED Talks. And she's also a very well-known LGBTQI plus activist in Timor-Leste to this day. So it appears that her work over the years has made a huge difference, and her truth has had a role in setting her people free. So it's pretty amazing.
And those dickheads didn't listen to what she had to say.
No, they were shit talking, man. Didn't you see they had to do their shit talking?
So Greg, what's a teachable moment that you could take away from Mateka?
So to me, this song looks inward. Chris is looking inward at the privilege of his own life. He's contemplating his fortunate life. But the song also totally rips musically. He's asking his audience to listen up, to consider their own station in the world, the experiences they have had or have not had, and why those experiences or inexperiences matter. And he pushes for all of us to look at how our countries behave abroad that help or hinder human rights for all. Something that stands out to me is in my classroom in the past, I've had my students do human rights violations research essays. And a lot of my 15 and 16-year-old students didn't even know that human rights violations take place in the world every day. It's somewhere in the world, human rights violations are taking place, like literally right this second. And my students were blown away that human rights abuses are so prevalent and ongoing and seemingly unsolvable. But, you know, Bella's story keeps me thinking and keeps my mind free while also helping to do a bit to get freedom for her country. I mean, it's an incredible story. It's a truly incredible song, a truly incredible story, and an absolutely pivotal sound shift for Propaganda's musical trajectory. So I'm thinking about a lot, but I can't really boil it down because there's too much happening in this song, too much history, too much violence, too many messages, too many ongoing geopolitical events over the course of the world, too many governments involved. It's too big. It's too big, and it's totally overwhelming. So my teachable moment is to not let the overwhelming nature of this overwhelm me into doing nothing ever. because you look at something like this, and you're like, that's so big, it's so terrifying. And so my teachable moment is to not be completely overwhelmed and overrun by it.
Yeah, Greg, this song makes me question the unmitigated power of the U.S. military. What good is having a defense budget greater than the next 10 countries combined if we aren't willing to protect human life? And this song makes me question our own penchant for romanticizing independence, liberty, and freedom. Words that I think become hollow amidst U.S. indifference or complicity. I mean, what good is our prattling on about self-determination and sovereignty if we are aiding the oppressors or we are the oppressors ourselves? This song makes me question the selectivity of power, where we intervene globally and where we don't, and how that map aligns with our political and economic interests. The song makes me question the post-Holocaust chant of never again.
Yeah.
And how little that phrase means to the slaughtered masses in Darfur, Rwanda, Cambodia, Myanmar, and Sinjar, and untold other locations. So, Greg, you gave a ton of information about Belagalos, but this song also makes me think about Abel Gutierrez, a refugee who escaped East Timor. He drove buses in Australia while organizing for his friends and family back home. He was later sent to study in Oxford by former East Timor President Jose Ramos Horta, and he later became the East Timor ambassador to Australia. So all of this reminds me that everyone has a backstory, everyone has something to teach, and to listen to the people I encounter, because I never know when I might be meeting the other Bela Galluses of the world.
Yeah, well, we found some YouTube comments as well. Some of my favorites are, I urge every fan of this song to research East Timor, and I can attest that it is a limitless amount that you can read on this country and the story of the country. Another one says, when I was 17, I joined the Marine Corps to fight for freedom and safety of my country. Why do I now feel like it's my own government I should have been taking arms against? Where did we all go so wrong? Did you find any?
Yeah, one was from the Sydney Moshcam video you mentioned. It said, oh, look, just as much talking at the beginning of this version as there is in the beginning of the studio version.
I love it. And then one more says, if anyone is ever looking for a reason to tip one back, January 27th is the anniversary of Suharto's demise. After what he did to the Timorese, I'd say that's a reason for a toast right there. Keith, go ahead and rate this one.
Yeah, Greg, while I can only talk about the band's progress in hindsight, right, it was later clear to me that when I had made my way to Best Buy in Bloomington, as I mentioned on the first episode, and took the bus, picked out either this or How to Clean Everything, and went back to my dorm and played Monopoly with my girlfriend at the time, that I made the wise decision buying this album. This song encompasses everything I love about Propagandhi, its musicianship, heart, brains, and also like a sprinkle of hope. And I wish I could go back and hear it for the first time, sitting down with the lyrics, exploring the backstory and the history more, rather than just kind of having it on the background. But again, if you're a Propagandhi fan, it's a process, right? You're continually to scratching the surface and finding out more things. So, Greg, this is a 5 for me.
I'm going to give it a 5 also. It's a crazy huge leap in song structure, performance, and a further foray into the storytelling side of Propagandhi that I love so much on songs that came before, like Preteen McCarthyist, Oka Everywhere, or like later, like with Bringer of Greater Things. But this is an utterly mind-blowing song, and it's one of the 4 best songs on Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes, and it is a 5 all the way, no questions asked. And I would be really interested to hear if a single fan out there would not rate this one a 5. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wonder if this is a 2 for anybody. Like, because I want to know what this person thinks. So anyway, this was our chat on Matika Moris Ukun Rasik. Thank you again to Willem from Intellectual for the great conversation and acoustic cover. And thank you to Ian Leger, the punk cellist, for backing up Willem on the fantastic cover. We appreciate you both. And if you want to find us, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Patreon at Propagandipod is our handle, Propagandipod on Instagram and Twitter. If you want to email me, you can email me at propagandipod@gmail.com. So that is it for this episode, and it's been a big one, so we hope you loved it, and we will be back next time. Take care.
Or murdered friend in this tiny woman's shoes.
You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. On this episode, I am bringing you a conversation with Jeff Lareau of the band Grey Ghost in Chicago, Illinois. Jeff is a regular poster on a propaganda social media group, and he shared an orchestral cover he made of Matika Moris Ukun Rasik. We first featured Matika Moris Ukun Rasik on episode 30, released December 9th, 2020. That episode features a cover and a conversation with Willem from the band Intellectual. Willem is accompanied on that cover on episode 30 by Ian Leger, who performs under the moniker The Punk Cellist. So I was really delighted to hang out with Jeff on this bonus episode to discuss his love of propaganda, seeing them live, figuring out how he and I have crossed paths in our lives, and his cover as well. So we had a really nice time hanging out. So please enjoy his orchestral rendition of Matika Moris Ukun Rasik, and then enjoy our chat. Thank you so much for listening. Jeff Lareau, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Jeff, it is a delight to have you here. And I'm wondering, our paths have crossed in real life many years ago, but we'll get into that.
Really?
Yes, I will
Have
tell
we met
you.
before? I don't remember this.
Dude, we have.
Okay.
And so here's where we met. Last annual, your band came to St. Louis a couple times and played shows with a band called Form Follows Failure.
Yeah. Jevin on drums. Yeah.
Correct. Jevin from Much the Same on drums, and Josh, who went on to play briefly in Break the Silence.
Yeah.
Matt, who went on briefly to play in Near Miss, and my friend Derek, who went on to play bass a little bit for a Wilhelm Scream on a tour where they supported Less Than Jake. So I was like best buds with those guys, and
I still have their EP. It was like maybe a 4-song or something like that.
Was it the one with the kid on fire on the front cover?
Yeah, I don't remember what the song was called, but there was a breakdown in one of those songs that I loved. I'm gonna have to go listen to it now.
Yeah, it's the Silent Shadows Walk Thin Lines EP.
Yeah.
So they had a long band name and a long album name.
Yeah. I remember we played with them at the Creepy Crawl in St. Louis, and I remember I had to ask them like 6 times what their band name was because I couldn't understand it. And then after the 6th time, I'm like, cool. I still didn't know until I bought the EP what the actual band name was.
Oh, I believe it. And it's one of those, it's like an architecture. It's a play on an architecture term, I believe. Form follows function.
Yeah.
And so they just kind of switched around the words. But they're good buddies of mine. And I was at that show when you guys played with them at the Creepy Crawl, and I remember your brother Andy had a headband on and a headset microphone. But you guys were great, and I also saw you in Chicago one time. I can't remember exactly where.
Oh man!
But I saw you guys in Chicago one time as well. So your path and we have crossed a couple times, but just kind of in passing, just very briefly, you know.
Yeah, that's very cool. It's weird how like Last Annual was a band, so I was. Between my 17th birthday and I think 19th or 20th birthday, maybe I was in Last Annual, and it's weird how many, like even just a couple days ago, there was this dude who was quoting Last Annual lyrics to me, and I'm like, dude, I don't even remember these lyrics. Like, it's so bizarre to me. You know, it was like still in high school at the time, and it's something that still comes up. It's just weird.
Yeah, well, I just looked on Apple Music and I cannot find Last Annual on there, so I don't know if you guys have any stuff uploaded anywhere at all. But
I mean, I still have it. I mean, I could send it to you, but no one in the band is putting any effort into getting those songs up on any sort of streaming service.
Yeah, just think you could all get like a royalty check once a year for like 18 cents each for some streams, you know?
18 cents would be a lot more than I would expect, but yeah.
So funny. So our paths have crossed, dude. And
that's cool.
I like your name. So because Jevin lived with your brother Andy for a while in Chicago before he moved back to California. So that's kind of where I was a little more in touch with Andy because of Jevin. But you popped up continuously on Facebook for me because you're a part of the Propaganda Appreciation Society on Facebook, that Facebook group. I don't post on there a whole heck of a lot, but every time I do go there, you're always posting something interesting.
I know. I'm always throwing stuff out there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it because I'm always looking for something fun to latch onto, which is how we came together today, which is fabulous. But just, you know, for the listeners out there who don't know you on that Facebook group, maybe just say hey to the listeners out there and kind of say who you are and what you do.
Sure. Hey, listeners, how's it going? Live in Chicago. I have been in punk rock bands since 15 to 38, which is how old I am now. There have been 3 full days where I haven't been in a punk rock band. So it's just been part of my life since that age.
God.
And you mentioned Last Annual. I was in a Chicago band called The Hallow for a while. I played drums in a band called Counterpunch for a while. I was in a band called Contents Under Pressure. I was in a band called Bad Dudes, which lasted maybe 6 months, but that's my favorite band name of any of the bands that I've been in.
Nice.
Bad Dudes. And then I'm currently in a band called Gray Ghost, which kind of relates to what you were saying. I got this gusto after we recorded and released our last 3 songs. I don't know. I don't remember when this was. It was 6 months ago or something like that. And I was like, you know what? I've been so influenced by Propaganda all these years. I'm just going to send them a Facebook message like, hey, I'm finally in this band that we're releasing music and like, we're all a bunch of old dudes. Like none of us are trying to get signed on major labels or go on tour or anything like that. Like I'm not trying to ask you for anything. This is what I do, and I would love to hear any feedback that you guys have. And I think it was Todd who wrote back. He didn't sign his name in there, but for whatever reason, it just seemed like Todd's writing to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, just it meant the world to me. Like he was so complimentary and was talking about specific lyrics that were making him laugh, and he liked the sound of it. He liked the harmonies. And it was just like, hey man, keep doing what you're doing. This sounds great. And it was like this perfect moment for me where I was like, oh my God, my hero just wrote back to me. Not only did he listen to my song, but wrote back and said that he dug it. And it was just a cool moment.
Well,
and
Todd they're so great about that too, you know?
Yeah. And it's actually not the first time that they've reached back out to me, because when I was a freshman in college, I was in some sort of history class that was about like international conflicts or something like that. And I had to write a paper, and I didn't know anything about this stuff. I didn't even know how to research these kinds of things. And I remember I reached out to Propaganda. I just emailed them like, hey, you guys are knowledgeable. If you were given this subject, how would you go about researching it? And they wrote me back right away. They were like, check these books out, go to your library, go do this, check this out. You'll want to read this website. It was like, how cool is that? You know?
God.
Yeah.
It's a real thrill. And I mean, imagine like my joy too, like a similar experience of starting a podcast, talking about their music and just being a complete nerd. And then like, they're actually like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. And then,
right. Yeah.
And then participating to the extent that they have, where we have like, you know, at this point, like a dozen hours of interviews of just us talking to them. I mean, it's really so surreal cool. If you think about like 1998 version of myself and then this version of myself, where it's like I've gathered these collection of conversations that will mean the world to me for the rest of my life. It's just so amazing. It's so cool. They're such a special band in that regard. And I know that everybody out there feels the same way, which is why we all kind of pay so much attention to what it is that they do.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people on that Facebook group have similar stories, because I posted that story on there, and I posted, people were like, oh, that's cool. Let's hear the music. And I posted that on there and got some good feedback. But other people were also posting in that chain how they had similar stories of them. It's just like, it's a band that is so accessible and so cool to their fans, you know?
I love it. Jeff, how did you get into Propaganda? Do you remember your sort of origin story at all?
Oh, yeah. So you mentioned Andy. So I was 16. Andy's 7 years older than me. So he's, 23 or something like that. We were both huge punk rock kids. My favorite band at the time was Strung Out. They were the greatest band ever to me, and I've always loved super gnarly, like intricate guitar riffage.
I'm a huge Strung Out fan too. Yeah.
So their guitar parts were a big influence on me, and their drummer Jordan Burns was like this massive influence on how I approach drumming. So big into them. And my brother walks into my room. He's like, dude, this band's coming to town that you'd like a lot, and they never fucking tour. So I bought you tickets, and you're coming with. And so of course I'm like, okay, yeah, sounds good. I'll go see this. So I went to see Propaganda live, having never heard a single song of theirs before.
Oh my God.
Right. And the first thing I ever heard by Propaganda was them live playing Fuck the Border.
So I'm too weak to book this place.
How the fuck's it going, fuck?
We had this great intro plan, but our sound guy, Mark the Butcher, fucking fucked it right up. Thanks, Mark. Hey.
Good work, Richard.
Thanks to Jay from the ADL. Believe it was Jay for his words and for coming out. Stop by their table on your way out the door after you're thrashed to death.
Yes. Yes? Ready, Rod?
I'm ready, George. Ready, Chris?
This set's dedicated to Micah, who I just saw in the crowd down there somewhere. He put on the first show I ever played in the U.S. A long time ago. Minot, North Dakota.
Way to get them riled up, Rod.
Freedom on top of your life. Better run the USA. Not a money, not no job. Give them mental stay alive. You got a problem with her living here. What do you help her? Before you fucking came. One country down. One country down. What people do? One country down. What people do? Send out the country. Fuck you all. No fences. No borders. People for all. Fuck the border. Fuck the border. Fuck the border. Fuck the border! Fucking time! Straight forward respect! It's a culture! Subject! It's a lot of you! Fucking country! Angry eyes! It's in your heart!
And I just remember, like, I looked over at my friend Eric, who had come with. We were both like, oh shit, this is another universe. Like, this is amazing. And for this chat, I almost chose Fuck the Border for that reason, because it was such a big moment for me. But from then on, I was like immediately hooked. Like, I bought Today's Empires at that show. I got home and I remember going down in the basement and I played the game Banjo-Kazooie and just put on Today's Empires. And right from the get-go, the first track was like this boom. I was hooked. And I remember I paused the game like 5 seconds into it because the riff from Moris, it was like, I got to get my guitar. What is he playing here?
Yeah.
And I probably spent the next 2 hours just like listening to the song over and over, but also that intro. I was like, I need to figure out what he's doing. And I didn't come anywhere close to figuring out what he was actually playing, but it was just this weird thing that was unlike any sound I had heard from a punk rock or metal band, because it's like, they aren't just power chords. They're not just major or minor chords. They're these weird, intricate chords that I had never come across in that kind of music. So that's how I was introduced to Propaganda.
Dude, amazing. So I think I actually found the show you went to. Did you go to,
Congress.
Congress Theater, March
Yep.
3rd, 2003.
Yeah, it's up on YouTube, I think.
Yeah, I'm looking at the videos right now. It was either January 3rd or March 3rd. I can't tell if the dating is like the European or the American month first or day first.
I think it's March, because I think the album came out in February. I might be totally wrong on this, but I think the album came out in February and they went on tour right away. And we were like, Chicago was pretty early on that tour, I think.
Dude, I think that's one of the only shows that I was able to find where they played Ladies Night in Loserville live.
Yeah.
Like that episode, I think that's the one that I ripped off YouTube to include in the Ladies Night episode.
Yeah. That I've gone back and watched that a handful of times, because it's like the video and audio quality aren't 100%.
Right, they're not synced up properly.
Yeah, it's so cool for me to relive that moment and be like, dude, you could probably see me in the crowd as this little 16-year-old, like, holy shit, this is going to change my life. And it totally did.
You have no idea how happy it makes me that you were at that show, because I've watched those videos so many times. And I was like, this is like, so it's like the Kowalski trio era, which is what I call it. It's pre-Beeve, pre-Sue Lynn. So it's just the three dudes, man. And I'm just like, yeah, this is so amazing.
Right. And they played like Purina Hall of Fame, like all these songs that I didn't know at the time. But of course I've gone back and like, oh, I saw that live,
Yeah. Have you seen them more times than just that one show?
So I was trying to think about this. I think I've seen them 6 times. I saw them up in either Milwaukee or Madison. I don't remember, but that was on the Potemkin tour. And then supporting cast. I was in grad school. I was in London at the time, and I saw them for that. Or no. I'm getting them all confused. I saw them in Chicago for supporting cast.
Nice.
In grad school for Failed States, which was a funny one because I couldn't find anybody to go to the show with me. I was like, anybody like Propaganda? And there was just, silence.
Yeah.
So I was there all by myself, which is like a weird way to go to a punk rock show. But
Dude,
that
I've
was a
done that
cool
so
one.
many times though.
Yeah. I guess once you get used to it, it's probably not as bad, but
Yeah.
I felt super awkward. But that was in Camden too, which was cool because Camden is kind of this area of London where like it was like the birthplace of punk rock. So that was
Yeah.
a cool thing to do. And then Victory Lap Asylum in Metro in Chicago, but there's definitely one that I'm missing because I saw them and Bad Cop opened for them and they were awesome. And that wasn't any of those shows. So it has to be at least 6 times.
Man, I think
I've
that
seen them.
Bad Cop tour was 2017 because when I had Lynn from Bad Cop on the podcast ages ago, let's see, Bad Cop 2017. Yeah, so it looks like it was, you probably saw them with Iron Chic, maybe.
Yeah.
Heart Sounds, Reviver, Bad
Reviver.
Cop.
That's it. Yeah.
Summer
Totally.
2017. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
Amazing.
Yeah, so cool. Bad Cop. Their most recent album, so
good.
If you haven't listened to it, yeah.
Oh, I love it. I had Lynn. So Lynn was on the podcast for the I believe it was the Call Before You Dig episode. Man, I'm going back in my memory here, but Lynn from Bad Cop is on the podcast too, which is awesome.
So cool. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you've recently sent me this incredible file. You've mentioned Moris Ukun Rasik a little bit. This is a song that sort of has stuck with you throughout your life. It sounds like
Totally.
like this is kind of like one of like the ones. Am I making sense here?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there were so many songs by them that hit me in certain ways that it was really hard to choose just one of them, but this one ended up being the one. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt what you were saying there.
No, that's fine. I mean, so we're doing people will have heard your the cover that you did. I put that at the start of the episode here, so everybody's already heard the thing that you have made. But tell me a little bit more about the record, like Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. Like, take me on like a little journey here of your thinking about what this record means to you in general.
Sure. Yeah. Oh man, that's a lot to unpack. So I'm going to have to talk about Today's Empires and Less Talk for a bit.
Sure.
If that's okay. That both
That's
of
fine.
them kind of equally they both kind of riff off each other in my past, I guess. So for the longest time, whenever anyone asked me my favorite album, I've always told them Today's Empires by Propaganda. It's just like my standard go-to favorite album. Like I mentioned, I saw them on their tour for that album, having no idea who they were. So buying that album and listening to it over and over and over, it just hit me at the right age. When I was perfectly primed to get sucked in by this kind of punk thrash sound that kind of unique punk thrash sound that they have going for them. But then also, my how do I word it? Like my brain hadn't been cracked open enough to absorb a lot of the world around me at the time, as a 16-year-old kid. And Today's Empires, I would say, is a big part of the first step that I took toward kind of shedding that mindset of like a sheltered, white, straight, kind of suburban American dude raised in a conservative, super Catholic environment. Right. It was one of the first things where I was like, I've known all this stuff since I was a kid, and maybe the stuff that I know is kind of wrong. And it's like, I don't know, it's embarrassing to admit now, but like I didn't absorb the messages of Today's Empires right away because I was like,
how can you?
Yeah, I was that, coming from Loving Strung Out, I was like, damn, dude, check out this solo in Purina Hall of Fame. Like, the meaning of the song didn't really impact me. It was all like the gnarly riffs and the cool drum parts and the bass and just their voices sound cool. I wasn't interested or knowledgeable about politics or anything at the time, and I didn't really read the lyrics from Today's Empires. When I got it, I just tried to play all the songs on guitar because they were so cool. But then, so a few months later, so I was 16 when I first saw them, got the album, was totally obsessed, told all my friends about it. For my birthday that year, a friend bought me Less Talk, and so this would have been 2001 or something like that, 17th birthday. And the messages of that album like weirdly hit me, particularly the song Less Talk, but the whole album, I guess, really. And part of it, was trying to think about this yesterday and why it hit me. And I think part of it is just the actual mix of less talk, because the vocals are so much more prominent, at least to my ears. They sound a lot more prominent than they do on today's Empires. But also the songs are like, I would say on average, like slower.
Yeah.
So the lyrics were like much easier to pick out for me at the time.
Yeah.
But whatever the reason was, I remember listening to the song Less Talk, and something about it made me stop and kind of be like, wait a minute, what is he trying to get across here? Like, what the hell do these lyrics mean? I need to know more. I need to absorb the lyrics of this song. So of course, lyrics are in the CD booklet. So I read along with the lyrics, and it was like mind blowing to me. Like, first of all, they're all written in this kind of free paragraph style format. You know what I mean? Which is so brilliant. It takes you off guard immediately, because it's just like, it's not a super common way to write lyrics, but reading along with Less Talk, it did something that music had never done for me before, which is like, it challenged me.
Yeah.
I remember thinking this like so clearly, like, shit, I love the sound of this band. I've loved the sound of this band for a while, but they're challenging me about these problematic viewpoints that I've never even thought to evaluate up until this point, right? It was the first band that I ever listened to that was like, it confronted me head on and was like, I felt like the song Less Talk was saying to me, like, no, don't just mindlessly listen and sing along with my lyrics. I have a specific thing that I'm telling you, and the song is like, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to the fucking white straight male fucking suburban problematic little dipshit teenager who doesn't realize he's part of the problem yet. And I just remember hearing that, and as a little dipshit teenager, it's like it totally changed my life.
Yeah.
So this is another one where it's like, for this chat, I almost chose Less Talk for that reason.
Yeah.
But, anyway, so I had this realization. I was like, man, okay, I've only been enjoying 50% of what this band has to offer so far. I'm a nerd about guitar and drums, and I like the melody lines and whatnot, but I haven't been absorbing a massive part of this band. So now I need to go back and dive into today's Empires, because that's the album that I just became completely obsessed with, right? I have to go back into that album and read along with everything, and that had an even bigger impact on me. And as you can imagine, particularly this song that we're about to talk about was,
oh my gosh,
like, how can it not? I mean, like, you read the lyrics along with it,
Oh my gosh, dude, whenever we were interviewing, so this is one of the episodes, Mataka, the original one, where Keith and I were procrastinating this episode for months, essentially, because we were afraid of it, because there was such a deep and intense backstory,
right?
For stuff regarding, the life of Bela Gallos and the regime of Suharto, and the all the stuff that's referenced in the song regarding the sterilization of people. And it's just so much that we really had no idea what to do with something that's intense. And then Keith and I were both like, we are not smart enough to handle this content. And
I hope I'm smart enough. Now I'm getting nervous.
Oh man, it was just really, really overwhelming. Like, there's a few episodes that we've done that really were terrifying to us. Mateka being one of them, another one being Oka Everywhere. There are just some episodes that we were just completely terrified to even approach. But let's talk. Yeah.
At first, I thought you were going to say you were terrified of it because you'd have to pronounce it. And like, that's been something where I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to pronounce the name of this song, and I hope I don't mess it up on this podcast. That'd be so embarrassing.
Man, you know what I did is, like, there are videos of Chris kind of introducing the song on YouTube and on their Live from Occupied Territories.
This is called Mateka Moris Ukun Rasik. To get shit talk, I don't single file. First one, fat boys and very skinheads who will never walk a
DVD that they made years ago, where he goes, "This song is called I messed it up, Mateka Moris Ukun Rasik." And so I just kind of like listened to him say it several times, and then I practiced it, and then eventually it just kind of starts to roll off the tongue.
Yeah.
But it's that's how I learned. I mean, I just watched and listened to Chris saying it over and over.
Yeah. I
Wouldn't
got
it
like
be
the
funny if
first
he's
half.
saying it wrong?
That'd be hilarious.
That would be amazing. Okay, so you did a cover of this song, Mateka Moris Ukun Rasik, but it's sort of like, it's a really interesting thing that you've done. You've almost turned it into sort of an orchestral arrangement adaptation. And I would love to know a little bit about the idea of how this got into your head, because this seems like an incredible amount of work that you probably had to put some hours into.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering like why you got this idea, and then, you know, why you saw it through to the end. And I don't know if you have like a story here, but I think it's kind of like, you know, maybe it turned into a little passion project or something for you. Tell me a little bit about the origin of your creation here.
Sure. Let me give you, I guess, a little bit of I got to give you some prequel story information here
Good.
before we get into so I've been a film score nerd for forever. I mean, it's like the first type of music that I fell in love with was like I was that kid at 4 years old who would rewind the Beetlejuice opening credits, and I would just 2 hours just listen to that over and over and over. So like John Williams, Danny Elfman, particularly those like 80s and 90s scores.
This makes a lot more sense to me now. I'm loving this.
Yeah, Jerry Goldsmith, who's probably my favorite, but I mean, I could list a million of them. So, you know, and in those younger years when I was mowing lawns to get money, all my money went to basically buying CDs. So
yeah,
and my collection was basically it was like Weird Al and then 100 movie scores. You know what I mean? Like it was like everything that I was listening to up until like middle school.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and then later it's like I got into obviously punk rock. That was probably in between 8th and 9th grade. I stole Andy's Good Riddance comprehensive guide album. Sorry Andy, if you're listening to and that was kind of like, and then 88 Fingers Louie, and I started getting into punk rock that way. But the orchestra has always been very much a part of my DNA, I guess, my musical DNA. Even in the band I'm in now, Grey Ghost, it's like that's a punk rock band, but I throw in orchestra bits into a few songs just because I love the sound of it. I think it's a unique way. You don't really hear a whole lot of orchestra samples in punk rock music, so throwing it in there I think is kind of fun to do now and again. So in college, I took a few music theory classes, and I absolutely loved those classes. It's like the only time in my life where I ever got straight A's in anything. And I had gotten some orchestral samples from a company called Vienna Symphonic Library.
Mm-hmm.
So, but, you know, taking music theory classes is different from taking like a composition or an orchestration class. So like I had these samples, but I didn't know how to use them, right?
Sure.
And so my way of trying to figure it out was, all right, let me do a couple of really easy cover songs to kind of test things out and see what I can do, if I'm even capable of making these sounds that are in my head. And I didn't want to do stuff that was already orchestral because that just seemed boring to me. Like the fun of it was turning something that wasn't orchestral into an orchestral piece. So like the first thing I did was like a Guile's theme from Street Fighter, and I did like the 90s X-Men cartoon theme and like stuff like that, where it was pretty straightforward, easy to do. They were fun little projects, but there really wasn't much creativity in there. It was just kind of like, well, these lend themselves to this. It's pretty easy to do. So it was like, all right, what else can I do? I don't want to jump into writing original songs yet because I'm not there yet. I don't know enough. And I remember driving to college. I went to community college, and I was driving in my car, and Mateka Moris comes on as it so often does, and it just kind of hit me because Chris Hanna is telling this amazing, heart-wrenching true story, and all the lyricism is couched within this kind of, you know, intricate, incredible thrash punk track, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it hits me that, you know, what if this song, what if this song and the subject of its lyrics, what if it were turned into a movie? What would that score sound like? And that was like the impetus thought of doing this. And it was one of those things where it's like, once I got that idea in my head, then it was like, oh, this is super exciting. I'm like, this is all I want to think about now, is how I can actually do this, if I could actually do this. So it's like part of the decision is practical. I was trying to test myself and see what I could do, but the other part of it was I just thought it would sound fucking awesome. Like I wanted to hear it. You know what I mean? Like, what would that sound like? I want to hear what that would sound like. And I don't know anybody else who would do something weird like that. So I guess I have to try.
So what are we hearing? Like, if you could, like, say you were picturing an orchestra on a stage in a concert hall, and they were playing this, like, what kind of, like, what instruments do you remember, like, programming in? Like, what are we hearing on this thing?
Yeah. It's funny because it's like, practically we're hearing me sitting at a computer just doink around and try and figure out what instruments sound good where. But I remember wanting right away to start the song off really quiet, just like it does in the Propaganda track, kind of low key, and so woodwinds and strings in the beginning of it. You got some flute flutters and things like that that are kind of introducing you to this world, right, that Bella has lived, and introducing you to Chris's story the way that he's telling it, in this slow kind of way. And then it gets bombastic with the percussion and the horn section at the same point in the song where the distortion guitars come in. Right.
I love that you called it a world, by the way. That was a really interesting choice of words there.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it feels, right? I mean, his lyrics build a world. This is a true story, so it's something that it's not like a speculative fiction where he's building a story that's kind of like, what if this happened? This is a true story that he's telling, and getting into that is there's just a lot of layers to it. So it is that way,
Yeah. I have come to see the last couple of years Propaganda's music being more defined by movements across a piece rather than parts that are put together. Does that make sense? So, like,
it does.
It kind of just reminds me of like a movement and then a second movement and then a third movement, instead of like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, where some of those parts can be interchangeable and like be moved around and are identical.
Right.
And, I saw someone recently do a wonderful piano cover of Potemkin City Limits as well, which is on YouTube.
I saw that. Yeah, that's cool.
God,
yeah,
so good. And, I've heard this one many times, and now hearing yours and hearing that Potemkin version, it just reinforces my view that Propaganda's music is movements instead of parts. And so I'm wondering, like, it's bigger than punk. It's bigger than metal.
Oh,
and I'm wondering if you have like an interpretation after making this thing, like, that makes sense of them as being like miniature movements to make up a full piece, instead of like, the normal song structure that you and I growing up playing in our little punk bands would have thought of,
Totally. Yeah, you're 100% right. And I would say that there are two things going on there. I think, first of all, like you're saying, their music isn't just power chords. It's not just 3 or 4 chords in a slightly different order for a verse and a chorus, it's, and like, even when they do a 3-chord verse, like I'm thinking of the verse for Today's Empires, those chords, they're not just power chords. Like, they have these weird, unexpected dissonant notes, open strings. I had been playing along with that song for like 20 years before I got the tab book, and I looked in the tab book and I was like, well, that was wrong. I wasn't playing that right at all. It's not the standard major or minor chord. So I'd say, like, that's the first basic thing. There's just more musicality going on that you can pull from to make it, whether it's a piano track or an orchestral track, there's more there for you to build off of. And that's not to say, it's like, I still love Good Riddance. I love those bands. They're basically just power chords the whole way through, or some octave chords. But like, it would be hard for me to adapt a Good Riddance song into something like piano or the orchestra, just because I feel like the weird, gnarly chords that Chris comes up with, they're just not there. So I think that's the first thing. But secondly, and this is probably more important, I think, how do I write? So I think it's all directly tied to how their lyrics are written, which sounds weird because an orchestral version doesn't have any words in it. But the thing is, the lyrics aren't just verse, chorus, right? It's not that structure. So the music can't follow that structure.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like their lyrics always inform the music, right? Rather than the other way around, which is how most songwriters work, right? Usually a songwriter will write music and try and fit the words to fit the song. But that's not how they work. It's like their song structures aren't always A, B, A, C, or whatever. They take these weird, unexpected turns, and at least I would say it's because they write their music to fit that kind of lyrical journey rather than the other way around. And that's something that just personally has really influenced me as a songwriter. It's like, don't force your lyrics to fit your song, force the song to fit your lyrics. Because once you make that switch, when you're writing music, you never again have to ask yourself, like, how am I going to fit this line into these 4 beats or whatever? Because it's like, well, don't worry about that. Make it 5 beats, make it 6 beats. If what's important to you is the message of the song, you make that song fit the message that you're trying to get across rather than the other way around.
Oh, man, that is so interestingly stated. Because like I was struggling with that concept. Like whenever we were talking about songs like Die Jugend marschiert, the way the lyrics come in in a very specific way, sung over the top of the song. I think on that episode I was talking about how it felt like the lyrics were kind of like almost like shoehorned in, and now I realized that I was completely wrong.
It's so weird because it's like it seems like such a small little difference, but it's humongous. Like I bet that dude who did the Potemkin City Limits piano video understood this at least intuitively, because that track is like a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Because like if you think about it, it's like the lyrics are they're this absolutely beautifully written true story of a pig's escape from a slaughterhouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the heartbreak is that they eventually catch the pig. It's like this harrowing story. Like it's brutal.
He dies anyway.
But if you think about it, the song, like the actual music, without any of the words in there, the music follows the flow of that story, because the music starts off with like this verse chorus type structure that has like a lot of energy. It's really fast. It's written in this major key, and the reason why it does that is because it's exciting. It's this pig who gets this wide open door that he gets to run through, all that dopamine and energy that's running through, like, oh, it's my big escape. It's written in a major key. It sounds more happy. But then as the song goes on, the pace kind of slows down a little bit. The hopeful tone of the music that was in the beginning of the song, that kind of drowns out. And by the end of it, it's like this it's not doing double time anymore. It's slowed down. The true story ends kind of the same way that the music ends. It's like the true story ends in this perverse way where the rush of escaping isn't there anymore. So the music reflects that and then follows along with it. It's fucking brilliant. Like I love that song.
Amazing. I mean, so I don't mean to like completely change the topic here. Do you have any other thoughts about like Mate Ka, or do you, because I'm also happy to hear about some of your thoughts on some of the other records. I know that you are an appreciator of the entire catalog.
Yeah.
Not just the first couple of records. Do you have any more thoughts on like your experiences or something that you learned about Mate Ka from the experience of making this cover that maybe you hadn't considered before? Because you must have listened to this song over and over and over over in order to make this cover. And I'm wondering if you have any little nuanced details that you picked up upon repeated listens that you might not have otherwise caught.
Yeah. I could talk about this song forever. I feel like I'm kind of wrestling because I could go on another background tangent and then talk about the lyrics of the song, or I can talk about how I approach writing. We can go either way. And I mean, let's
do lyrics a little bit. I'm curious on your thoughts here, because I'm always happy to hear people's own experiences in relation to a particular song. Because whenever we break down a song here, I mean, it's just our interpretations oftentimes, which, it's a lot of people have written me like, man, I totally disagree. So I'm always open to hearing what other people think about these.
Okay, so that's like a perfect segue for what I wanted to get into, because like that's amazing to me that people will have completely different interpretations. And the reason why is like, and the reason why I love Propagandi's lyrics so much, it's like I've always liked songs that kind of I don't know what other way to say it, but like don't have a huge amount of room for interpretation. Like we talk about Mate Ka Moris, it's like it's about a specific story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no way you could be like, oh, I think that that's actually about the German wall. You know, like there's no way. It's not about that. It's about this
Right.
thing. You could make it a metaphor for another thing, but it's
Mhm.
about a specific thing. And you know, I feel like there are a lot of lyricists out there who I don't know, for lack of a better word, I feel like they hide kind of laziness by making songs really vague and
Mhm.
like completely open to interpretation. And a lot of genres that's like really celebrated. It's like, wow, this is so deep, but it's also universal. And to me, it's like, no, it's not.
Interesting.
It's like I you know, the clearest example I could give you is like any pop song where there's like a love song with a lot of general language, you know, you did this to me, I can't believe it, or whatever. It's like vague language so you, the listener, can mold into any situation. You can mold that into any situation you've ever been in. It's like, and people listen to that, it's like, oh, it's so universal. And I don't know, I typically don't like that. And sadly, I feel like in a lot of punk rock, I mean, I love punk rock, but I'll say like a lot of punk rock is often just as bad, where it's like you'll listen to a politically motivated punk rock song and it almost feels like you're listening to buzzwords. Like it's like,
Yeah.
we will rise, we will fight, we will fight against the power or whatever. And those always
Right.
frustrated me because it's like, as a listener, it's always like, well, okay, we're gonna fight the power. How?
Yeah.
What are we gonna fight? What power are we talking about? What specifically are you mad about? Because those elements, it's like if the song doesn't have those elements, the song doesn't bring anything new to the table. And it's the same thing with like, you know, if you work in an office and you're in a meeting and people start talking about like synergy or holistic or whatever, it's like there's no, I don't know, I was going to say there's no meat to it. That's probably a horrible thing to say on a propaganda podcast, but like, you know, punk rock song with vague, angry lyrics that are supposedly political, it's like that doesn't inspire me. That's not thought provoking. That's not
Right.
It doesn't stay with me as like a brilliant artistic output. And like at best, a songwriter will have an interview where they're like, oh, that song is actually about, you know, my daughter's pet hamster and how sad she was when she passed away or whatever. And to me, it's like, dude, that sounds way cooler. Like, why I wish you wrote that into the vague lyrics, because that sounds like a better song. Like I would have responded to that emotionally. Having gone on that huge tangent, bringing it back to propaganda, one of the things that always hit me about propaganda is that they never cheap out with that. Like their songs are typically about pretty specific things, and not that they're not open to interpretation, because they are, and you can gather metaphors from what they're talking about, and you can extrapolate a lot of different things. But I mean, I remember getting into an argument with a dude 20 years ago he was saying that today's empires, because it has the F word in it, he was saying that it was a homophobic song. And I was like, dude, you're not getting this. Like it's not a homophobic song. Like you don't understand this band. They're not homophobic at all. So anyway, they never take the easy or the lazy route with their lyrics. A lot of them are little puzzles that you have to figure out.
Mhm.
Lines that might throw you off with a reference that you might not be familiar with, or like a phrase you don't know anything about, or sometimes you have to think about them to kind of figure out what that meaning is. But the lyrics are always about something, and they're about something specific, and I just love that. You know, like we were talking about Potemkin City Limits. I had no idea what a Potemkin village was when that album came out, so I had to kind of do my homework a little bit and figure it out. And you know, Chris calls this out in what's the name of the song? I'm blanking on it. Music is power to describe, compel, renew. Rock for sustainable capitalism. It's like, I didn't know that was a thing until propaganda. You know what I mean? So anyway, having said all that, I'm going to finally start talking about Mate Ka Moris. Promise. What it's specifically about is, you know, you mentioned before, is the Indonesian genocide of the people of East Timor, and a woman named Bella Gallos, who is a total badass.
Yeah.
Like, where's her movie? You know what I mean? You hear about her life during this decades long genocide of her people, just heartache after heartache, and then she effectively became like a double agent as a teenager, and apparently did so well that she was picked to go to Canada as, like, I don't remember, it was like a like a foreign exchange program or something like that.
Yeah.
And she ends up getting refugee status and started campaigning for human rights. It's like, what an inspiring person. Like, if you don't get emotional reading those lyrics, or just even reading her Wikipedia page, or just reading about her, it's like you are a robot, because it's so crushing. But also hearing about it, it's so humbling, it's so inspiring. It's like, I don't know. I don't write screenplays, but I could write that movie. You know what I mean? It's like, it's such a good example of all of just human, just inspiring in all these different ways. And then on top of that, you have Chris Hanna, who he almost adds this lyrical intro to the song about how, during this woman's horrible childhood, he was living this carefree life, riding his bike, making out with a girl in a Speedo and all this different stuff. Meanwhile, Bello, who's probably, I'm going to guess, around the same age as Chris Hanna, she's in East Timor, living through just the purest form of hell,
Yeah.
And it's this great lyrical moment of
Contrast.
Yeah. You contrast humility too. Is a contrast in humility, because he's basically revealing his own previous ignorance. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like another version of him saying, what's the line from Last Talk where he says, "I'll call you on your shit, please call me on mine." It's like that humility of, I had this in my background, and he's able to show his faults as a teenager, or however old he was at the time. And it's funny because it's like, when I first heard that song, I was 17, right? Barely 17. And it made me go, I guess I was 16 when I first heard the song, but 17 when I started to absorb it. But like, it made me go, so wait, like right now I'm that carefree kid in this song who hasn't been paying attention, right? I'm that kid who doesn't know what's going on in the world. And that is the main reason why I picked this song over the other ones, is because it was that moment of clarity, and like being like, man, Chris Hanna is talking about himself as a kid being carefree and not recognizing all this other stuff that's going on in the world. And that's me right now. Like, I'm the next version of that, where I didn't pay attention to any of that. And now I have to.
Yeah. And he's also saying, like, this is my learning journey.
Right.
And if you continue to try, your learning journey can be, rewarding and fulfilling in your own way as well. And I love the fact that he constantly turns the camera in on himself.
Yes.
In order to, put himself within situations where he kind of realizes these like light bulb moments within his own life.
Yeah.
And it's just such an amazing thing that he's able to do that in this song, but then also teach me about, Suharto, the Indonesian army officer and second, and like the longest serving president of Indonesia, and the Santa Cruz massacre of East Timorese pro-independence demonstrators in like the Santa Cruz cemetery. And it's just like the fact that he contrasts his upbringing with what somebody like Bela Gallos went through, while also throwing in these extremely deep and important historical events, all within the course of like basically a paragraph's worth of words.
Right.
It's pretty stunning. I mean, it never gets boring for me to talk about on the show.
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible. And I had that, you said that he's had these light bulb moments, and he gave me a light bulb in that song. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's so incredible that he was able to do that in one paragraph. And I felt for a while, after reading all the lyrics of Today's Empires and reading through Less Talk, it was like, I felt like I was Rowdy Piper from They Live. You know what I mean? Just like walking around at things and being like, oh shit, none of this is what I thought it was. And like, I was just one of these people walking around completely happy in my own little world. Happy to not think about big issues because they didn't affect me. And, I just, those lyrics are really the spark of that light bulb that made it happen for me.
What were some of the things that you noticed about the reissue of Today's Empires that really jumped out at you?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that jumped out to me was, there was a lot of EQing done on the separate instruments so that you could pick out everything a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned this before with Less Talk, where the vocals are much easier to grab as a listener, as a first-time listener to that album particularly, whereas they weren't really easy for me to grab the first time I listened to Today's Empires. But that new mix of Today's Empires really makes the vocals pop. You can hear kind of every different instrument very clearly in that mix. And objectively, I think it's a much better mix than the original release. But what's funny is that it's like I've listened to that original release for 20 years, and that was the one that was like a huge impact on me. So if I ever go back and listen to it, I always listen to the original one, even though I know that like objectively the newer reissue of it sounds much better. But it's like I don't know if it's just comfort food or whatever. It's like that this is the version that I'm used to, and I always just want to hear this version of it.
How did you make sense of the clips being taken out, like Ego Sum Papa, Purina, Mateka? Like they cut out a lot of stuff in there, and I'm wondering how that sat with you as a listener, because I've said it here before that I really like that both versions exist, because one of them you just get through the record like kind of a lot faster. But what are your thoughts on the removal of the clips?
I feel the same way. So it's almost like if there's a special edition of a movie where they change something, I want the original version still available. And if they made it so that I couldn't listen to those clips anymore, I would be pissed off. But since I could still listen to either version, it works for me. But I'll tell you, back in the day, back in like, I was still in high school at the time, so 2001 or whatever, I had a program called Cakewalk, and I put Today's Empires into this program, which is similar to like Logic or whatever now, only much more rudimentary. And I cut out the clips so that I could listen to the songs a lot faster.
No way.
At the time. But if I were ever, how do I explain it? So if I were just listening to one track at a time, I would listen to the tracks without the clips. But if I were listening to the album, because sometimes I just like to listen to a full album and get that full experience, I'll listen to it with the clips. But I think I love those clips in those songs, but I totally get, like you were saying, I totally get the instinct of like, okay, we can get through these a lot faster without them in there.
Jeff, I'm really excited that you did this cover, because their music lends so well to it, and I'm wondering if you would consider doing more in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to. I always have this mentality where it's like, if one human being out there likes something that I've done creatively, that means the world to me. Like that's enough. And so to hear your positive response, because I mean, I did this like 6 years ago or something like that, and I threw it up on YouTube, and I think I have maybe 2 comments on there, and they're both very positive, and that's great.
Yeah.
But it's like talking to you about it and hearing your response, it's kind of making me like, maybe I should do more of that. Maybe I should think about a good song to do that would lend itself to the orchestra, and take another stab at it and see.
I think that you should. And it's just something to especially you're in the dead of winter over there as well in Chicago, and over here in Buffalo, I mean, our winters it is what it is over here. But I love these kinds of little creative projects that can get us through some times. If you happen to find yourself with a little bit of free time in the wintertime, and you're like, hey, maybe I should do another orchestral cover, definitely do it, and then we can talk about it more.
I think I will.
These are always super fun, and you are welcome here anytime. But
cool, man. I appreciate you. I appreciate the podcast. This is awesome.
I love it. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you if they want to check out your tunes or get in touch?
Sure. Yeah. I guess get in touch. I'm on Facebook. You can find me on the Propaganda Appreciation group on Facebook. Gray Ghost is the name of the band that I'm in. So GRAY Ghost. And we had to put a "the" in front of it for all the streaming services, because there is another artist out there called Gray Ghost. So officially it's called The Gray Ghost, but we just call ourselves Gray Ghost. Check that out. We released a lot of music. We've been releasing 3 or 4 songs every couple of months over the last few years. It's a lot, as you can imagine. It's a lot of left-wing ideas, unsurprisingly. Typically we try and make it kind of funny, kind of humorous. So like, Like there's a song that's about being an atheist, but all the lyrics are Kurt Russell puns, so it's called Kurt Russell's Teapot. It's like things like that. We try and make people laugh while we're, you know, saying our left wing ideas in there. Yeah, if you like it, check out our Facebook. We have a Bandcamp page. We have all that stuff. You can send me a message. I'll friend you on Facebook if you want to talk or chat or whatever.
Jeff Lareau, thank you so much for coming on Unscripted Moments podcast for Propaganda. Been a real pleasure.
Hell yeah, man. Thanks so much.
If you are a Propaganda fan, Without Love is fantastic, and if you've never heard them, they sound like this. For the last few years, John and I have corresponded here and there, and I have grown to really enjoy his messages and his band and talking to him about, just general things in relation to some of the episodes that we've talked about over the last few years. It was a delight to welcome him to discuss his band, Without Love, what it's like to care about ethically sourced merch as a band in 2023 and 2024, and we then do a deep dive into his favorite Propaganda songs, A Speculative Fiction, Potemkin City Limits, and Matika Moris Ukun Rasik. During the Potemkin City Limits section, we talk quite a lot about John's time working in the factory farm animal industrial industry. So if that gives you any squeamish feelings, just heads up on that, okay? If you want to check out Without Love, go to withoutlovehc.bandcamp.com or find their EP Surrender, their split with Time Heist, and more anywhere you stream music. Thank you so much to John Schofield for joining me. Please enjoy our conversation. Well, do you want to chat about your last tune selection?
Yeah.
I love that we went out of chronological order here, right? We started with the 2005 record, then we went to 2009, and now we're going back to 2001 with Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes, and the opening track, Matika Moris Ukun Rasik. So my first question about this tune, what do you think about the two separate versions, one including the Bella Gallos clip and one not? How do you see the two separate versions of this song that now currently exist?
Yeah, I mean, I love the reissue. Just
Me too.
in terms of the audio quality, I think it's so much better. I mean, I love the album anyway, but yeah, it's really like a breath of fresh air hearing it with the improved production. I don't know where I sit really in terms of having it with or without the sample. I think it was very important to hear that the first, when I first heard the album, because I think anytime you hear a sample, you know that it's obviously been included for a reason, and makes you want to look into where it's from, what it's about. And I think with them taking the samples out of the whole album, I don't think it's that they, wanted to undo that. I think they probably weren't expecting to gain a whole new load of fans by doing the reissue. I think they were mainly expecting it to be received by people that already were familiar with the album. So I think Chris said maybe it's something like trying to just improve the flow of the record, which I think it does. But yeah, I think it would be a shame for people to, if that was their first exposure to that album, to miss out having the sample. But I can never listen to the new version without thinking. As soon as I hear it come in, I still cast my mind back and think about the sample.
Yeah.
So yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, I'm in two minds about it. But for me, I like having both versions.
Awesome. Why did you pick this tune from Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes as one of your selections?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely knew I wanted a Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes track out of as one of my three. And I think it's a great sets the tone for the record. It's a great opening track. And it's one that I probably one of their songs that I learnt the most from.
Mm-hmm.
And that that's partly in no small part due to the episode you guys did on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, but there's been plenty of times when I've learned a lot from Propaganda. This is definitely a prime example of that.
Wonderful. Let's what do you think about the music? Because to me, this one's got like absolutely everything. This is a tune that to me was transformative in the way that I saw this band,
Mm-hmm.
what they were capable of musically as performers and players. This is not the first song that I heard from Today's Empires. I
Okay.
heard Bullshit Politicians on like Napster or LimeWire
Okay.
or something like that in the lead up to the album. So this is not the first song that I heard off this record because I was a little cheater and I went in and found whatever I could find. So I heard this and Albright Monument Baghdad and Today's Empire is the title track before I ever heard this song. But then when this record came out and I went and got the actual album, obviously this comes on and it blows the doors off of everything that I thought was possible in punk. Tell me a little bit about your musical thoughts on this tune.
Yeah, I think it's just a perfect album opener. It's got that very slow, sort of vulnerable intro, which really sort of it sort of eases you into the album and then rips into the fast-paced thrash sort of guitars. And I obviously I'm looking at it with hindsight, but it must have been a real change of pace for people that were familiar with the previous two records.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that about it. Musically, it's really setting out their stand from the band they were going to be from this point onwards.
Yeah.
And I think it's it's got the juxtaposition between the thrashy bits and the sort of more like mournful, sad sounding guitar parts, the sort of the higher thing, which I think I see it as like the thrashy parts are kind of like the angry parts, and the mournful sort of guitars are like the sad parts, which tie very well into the lyrics. And it's kind of got that building bit. It kind of builds in the bridge with that tension, and then it's got like a really sort of triumphant sounding ending. Just after the intro, it just sort of pulls no punches. It's just in there raging away until the end. The bass playing on this is another some great bass runs, bass fills, whatever you want to call them. For Todd, obviously this being the first track on a first studio album with him, I think it's a great bass performance too.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that the slower brooding. She laid it at the gates of the general's embassy.
So much like intent packed into
whisper
that.
echoed into dawn as she disappeared. It's got like some soul and feeling behind it too. It's really good. The truth will set my people free. Oh man, I love it. I've got like chills now just thinking about listening to it. A song I've heard 1,000 times, in the last 20 plus years. I'm just like, it still does that to me. So John, we've chatted over like Instagram DM a lot the last couple of years. And just kind of chatted about the episodes a little bit casually here and there, just kind of as buds. But I'm curious, like, I know you have a very deep connection to this song. I know you love it very much, and I'm just very curious to hear your thoughts on the connections to the lyrics that you have, because it's a really deep one, but it's a very specific one, right? It's comparing Chris's life to Bella Gallos's life in a really masterful way. Showing the differences and the compare contrast between two lived experiences. And I'm just like curious where this song, what it gets you thinking about.
Yeah, I think that's something they do really well with their lyrics. I know Todd does it in quite a few of his songs, but here focusing in on one person's story as the way that they explain this, the wider story about what was happening in East Timor. I think it's just gives people a better point of connection. than just hearing about a country that had its entire population sort of oppressed. And it's factual. It makes you want to learn more about it. These are real people. Obviously, there's the liner notes that come with the album, which was gives a lot of context to it. But yeah, I just think that's very it's a very good way to do it, rather than just singing about how awful things were in East Timor, and there's all these sort of nameless faces that are being described living under oppression. Yeah, and as you say about Chris comparing himself to Bella, with around the same time, and saying what he was getting up to while she was going through all these horrific things. And yeah, I think that's something I was do with I was like thinking about the age I am now, and then looking at people like Chris and thinking what he was doing at the same time, when he was this age. And he was probably, when he was my age, he was probably writing Potemkin City Limits album. And I look at that and I'm like, some I can't imagine having the the intelligence to write lyrics about stuff like that, or the the musicality to do what was their most ambitious album in my mind. And I think I think we all compare ourselves to other people of different ages. It's easy to look at other people in bands that are younger than you and doing something that you're blown away by. But yeah, in terms of more serious things, and especially like the comparison he has with Bela Gallos, and looking at the oppression in East Timor, over the last few months, everything that's happening in Gaza. And I've been following a lot of the personal accounts of the journalists over there, and some of them are in their early 20s,
right,
and covering these atrocities. And yeah, you think, God, what was I doing in my early 20s? Just like nothing productive, really. And you look at what these amazing, courageous people are doing, exposing what's happening to the people of Gaza. And yeah, it goes back to what I was saying about having this personal point of connection. I think sometimes you're hearing the numbers of people that are being, the number of civilians that are being killed in Gaza, and it's kind of hard just to comprehend a number of however many tens of thousands of people have died. But when you've got these just seeing individual stories is very impacting, and I think just gives people a sort of another way to connect in terms of empathy.
Yeah, what's something crazy is that I have these memories of going to like this teaching job fair in 2006, and there was a school from Gaza that was
really?
hiring English language teachers, and I actually like had an interview.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like they were asking me questions like about my awareness of what life was like in Gaza, and I couldn't answer any of their questions like at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, "This interview is over."
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, they're like, you don't.
You were not ready for this.
They're like, you will collapse as a human being if you try to come and do this job. So I was like in an interview at an interview job fair, like on a round robin, fast paced, like where I was like jumping around from school to school kind of thing. And the person from Gaza they talked to me for like 5 minutes, and they were like, "No, absolutely not. Move on."
Yeah. But I think not saying any of us would be able to deal with it, but obviously it is thanks to people like these young journalists that have obviously got it so much more into the majority of people's awareness now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think obviously before that, it wasn't something a lot of people knew much about.
Yeah. What are you who are you paying attention to with regards to Gaza and the war in the last couple of months?
I'd say the main ones have been Bisan, Motaz. He's actually just left Gaza. And then I'll be honest, I followed a bunch of accounts, and I kind of get overwhelmed at how much stuff comes through. I can't remember all their names, but yeah, there's maybe another 5 or 6 that are actually, based on the ground in Gaza, people there that I'm following. And it's I know it's you maybe shouldn't feel more worried about those people's safety than any other civilian in Gaza, but when you see things that they've put online about being trapped in a hospital under bombardment and things, and there's been nights where you're going to sleep. That's the last thing I've looked at on my phone before I go to sleep, and thinking, is that person still going to be alive when I wake up the next day? And it's, as I say, you should feel the same way about any person that's in Gaza right now. But you have these people that you sort of feel like you have this connection with.
Have you been able to talk to any friends or family or anything like that in your life about what's going on? Because I try to talk about it with a few select people as much as I can, but it's not easy to talk about with people in your own life because of how emotionally demanding it is to talk about stuff like that.
A bit. I mean, I'd say in terms of family, it's something I've touched on with them, and not really going into great detail on anything, but they certainly know I've been to a number of protests around the country, pro-Palestine protests. Most friends, I would say, I'm able to speak to about it. I've got some people that have told me, tried to argue with various points about things I may have said about it, which is hard, when you've got people that you hold close to you, and it's kind of alarming to see that people can believe something so different to how you're seeing the situation unfold. It definitely had some difficult conversations about it.
Got it. Yeah. I've chatted with some friends who are Jewish and have traveled to Israel in their lives, and it's one of those things that a lot of people are really grappling with, a lot of brand new realities that they have been able to conveniently not face for their entire lives.
Yeah.
So I can personally tell you that some of the people that I know in my own life who have been to Israel, who are Jewish, are like going through some pretty wild mental and emotional turmoil with regards to a lot of the realities as well. So it's been really interesting to see how this particular conflict, out of all of the conflicts that have happened throughout the course of our lives, how this one seems to be such an important turning point as far as like awareness and being unable to look away from
and
like the carnage and destruction.
And obviously such a big part of it is going back to our own country's involvement in what's happening over there. And this was another of the lyrics from this track I wanted to touch on, was a prison my country underwrote in paradise. And I think it's just a good example of history repeating itself. When I first heard this song, I had to go and look up and see what the UK's involvement was in Indonesia, trying to take over East Timor. And no surprise, they we were selling arms to Indonesia. And I'm not claiming to be an expert on any of this, so anyone that's listening, please go and look it up for yourselves rather than just taking what I say at face value. But it's obviously the way the US and the UK backing Israel and continuing to sell arms to them, even after the recent ICJ ruling. Our documents have been leaked from our government about them having concerns from the start of this part of the conflict that Israel's been committing war crimes and continuing to sell arms to them. So I don't I mean, what more do I need to say about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, John, these three tunes that you selected are absolutely wonderful. I love that you chose songs from all three of your favorite records. I love these three songs. I love the variety of your own personal connections about
Thanks.
current activist work, past professional experiences, thoughts on your own country and like trade relations with other countries. Like you put so much thought into these three selections, and you made it so personal and so meaningful in ways that sometimes I don't get as far as like conversations like this go. So like I love all of your connections to these
Thanks.
three
Yeah,
teams. So I
and
just wanted to say
that's.
thanks, man.
Oh no, that's cool. It's been fun to chat, and yeah, even when the subject matter's heavy sometimes. But that's the thing, isn't it? Everybody takes something different away from lyrics. So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah. So the last thing I just wanted to say about that song was I didn't want to hijack the entire. Obviously, the song's about East Timor. I didn't want to hijack the entirety of that and to talking about Palestine, but the reality is I had to learn about what happened in East Timor from a song.
Yeah.
And I don't know many other people that probably don't even know the name of the country, East Timor, let alone what happened there. And I guess this is why atrocities like this continue to happen, because people don't learn from history. So yeah, I'm forever grateful to Propaganda for opening my eyes to some things like that. And
Yeah.
I wonder if there'll be a song about Palestine on the next album.
I would imagine. I mean,
Yeah.
another source that I wanted to point out to folks, if they have not heard of this, I've mentioned this a couple of times. I think maybe on my Discord that I have, but also on maybe a recent episode, is a book called Not So Distant Past by Dr. Joseph Nevins. And it came out from Cornell University Press, but it is a book about East Timor. It came out in
Okay.
2005, but I recently found that. But if anybody has any like library access, whether at a university, especially in a university, because it'll be so easy to find because it's an academic press. But a really good book that I'm enjoying right now is Not So Distant Past by Joseph Nevins about East Timor. Really fascinating stuff. So I'm still continuing my own interests in this exact topic because of this song. Like you mentioned, man, like you can't underestimate the power of learning about important social issues from music.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look up that book.
John, do you have you ever seen Propaganda live before? Have you had a chance?
Yeah, been lucky enough to catch them 3 times.
Fabulous. What eras? When? Where?
So I think the first time I saw them was the Failed States tour, and they actually played here in Sheffield.
Mm.
So that would have been, I think it was 2013, and it's I had no idea at the time that they were because had only got into them maybe a couple of years before that, and I didn't realize that they didn't necessarily tour all that often.
Mm-hmm.
And to me it was like, oh yeah, they've got a new album out, yeah, they're touring to support that album as bands do. But yeah, I didn't really realize how lucky I was to actually be seeing them, and so close to home. So yeah, that was with amazing lineup. It was with Comeback Kids, Shai Hulud, and War on Women.
Awesome.
So yeah, very lucky that I got to see them so soon after getting into them. And so yeah, that was with Beav on guitar, and yeah, just incredible gig. Yeah, and playing. Well, I mean, they always do a good job of playing stuff from sort of all eras. But yeah, just blown away by how great they were that first time I saw them. And then yeah, the other 2 times I managed to see them were both in London, and both very like happy coincidences that I was actually able to see them. So one time was in 2017, and that was with Petrol Girls, who I mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
great band as well. So yeah, I think that day I was already down south in the UK because my previous band was meant to record somewhere near London, and I'd seen Propaganda were playing the same night, but we already had studio time booked, and I was like, oh, never mind, I guess I'll have to miss them. The gig was sold out. Anyway, on the day that we were meant to be recording, our drummer phoned in sick that he wasn't going to be able to make the recording, and I was like, right. So I got straight online and managed to find somebody selling a spare ticket for the gig, and
perfect.
Headed to that, and that was great. I think so. That was 2017, but it was just before Victory Lap, the album, had come out. but there was a couple. They'd released a couple of tracks from the album ahead of its release, and I didn't realize this at the time. But looking on Setlist FM since then, apparently it was the first time they ever played the song "Victory Lap" live.
Oh, wonderful!
Yeah, so that was pretty cool looking back, and that's one of my other all-time favorite songs by them. So that was a special one for sure. And then the year after, 2018, they were in London again, and I just happened to be down there for work. So yeah, got a ticket for that, and that was with Petrol Girls and Reviver. And yeah, it's not that far in the grand scheme of things, but I don't normally just travel to London for gigs. It's just that bit too far, and it's expensive to get down there and stuff. But obviously now being aware of how little that they tour, I would be there in a heartbeat to see them again if whenever they come back. But I think it's, again, with all the Brexit stuff, it's a lot of bands are skipping the UK entirely now and just doing European tours. So I'm fully prepared for the fact I might have to go and see them somewhere in Europe next time if they ever come back.
Well, John, I think that your band Without Love is awesome. I love that the song Without Love was not one of your selections. I think that's hilarious and awesome.
I thought it might have been too on the nose to pick that.
So funny. But man, what a great conversation. I'm really hoping that folks will go check out Without Love. The EP Surrender, easily findable. I was like looking at your Bandcamp a few minutes ago as well. So I mean, I obviously hope everybody will go and check it out. We put a clip earlier in the intro, so I hope folks will use that as an opportunity to realize that your band pretty much properly rips, and will give you guys a little support.
Thanks.
Where would you direct listeners if they want to get in touch and follow along with what you all have got going on?
Yeah, sure. The best place to see what we're doing is Instagram. I don't have the energy to run multiple social media accounts, so it's Without Love HC on Instagram, and yeah, we're on all the streaming platforms, and Bandcamp. Our handle for anything that we are on is Without Love HC, so hopefully you'll find us on there. We also just put a track on a compilation a couple of weeks ago. It's called Hardcore, A Homeland Denied, Hardcore for Gaza, and it's a fundraiser compilation with over 100 bands on there, some big names, and I think it's already raised like nearly $9,000 for Mecca for Peace, the charity. So that's worth going and having a look at. That's just search Hardcore for Gaza, and you'll find that. And yeah, that's everything we've got out at the moment. Yeah, we'll be working on new stuff constantly, so hopefully we'll have something out at some point. Yeah, gigs around the UK. Maybe some, we'd love to get over to play mainland Europe at some point. So yeah, just follow us on Instagram. Keep an eye out.
Awesome, John Schofield. Thank you so much for coming on Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks, Greg. It's been great to be here.